Chapter 760. As soon as Wishaoduo entered the school, he was shocked to find that the atmosphere was very different from usual. The big screen in front of the school had not been turned on for a long time. Now it was lit up by itself. Light radiated in all directions. The content on the screen was very simple. It was just a snow-white background with big blood-red words. Sky Inspecting Minister Token. This was the highest command that could command the entire astral souls. The first reaction of all the students after seeing these words was to salute and pay their respects at the first moment. So Wishaoduo, Li Chenglong, and the other students who had just entered the school also bowed at the same time. It's actually the Sky Inspecting Minister Token. Li Chenglong was so excited that his face turned red. Big brothers, the minister hasn't issued an order for many years. But he has finally reappeared in this world. It seems that the current situation is very dangerous, and he has finally come out to preside over the overall situation. That's right. Under the leadership of the Sky Inspecting Minister, the continent will be invincible and advance bravely. Li Chenglong raised his arms and roared. Why are you so excited? Wishaoduo asked in surprise. The minister is my idol in this life. Li Chenglong was so excited that his face was red. He said, my lifelong wish is to be able to fight under the minister's command. In fact, it was not only Li Chenglong. Wishaoduo also looked at the word Sky Inspecting Minister Token and couldn't help but feel emotional. Sky Inspecting Minister. What kind of lofty title was this? It was so noble that even if there was nothing going on, as long as this name was mentioned, everyone would feel reverence and respect from the bottom of their hearts. This was a true legend in the astral souls. A living miracle, a living legend. Life is short. If I can reach the level of the Sky Inspecting Minister, then my life will not be in vain. Wishaoduo was fascinated. Yes, this is what it means to be at the peak of one's life. It's magnificent. Li Chenglong was fascinated. Wishaoduo let out a long sigh. How good would it be if this heaven inspecting minister was my father? Li Chenglong was stunned. He really did not expect Wishaoduo to say such a thing at this moment. Moreover, he wasn't going to become a subordinate of the minister, or even the minister himself, but the minister's son. His train of thought always surprised me. It was too strange. But why would he want to be the minister's son? The minister's son isn't an ordinary second-generation cultivator. He has to bear a lot of pressure. You can't afford to be called a hero while your son is a bastard. How much effort did he have to put in to not be looked down upon by others? With Boss's personality, he shouldn't have such goals and ideals in life, right? Then, Li Chenglong heard Zhuo Xiao's answer. If that's the case, my life. Wishaoduo sighed. It'll be perfect. It'll be the peak of one's life. I'll just eat and wait for death. I can even make it to the Umno Alliance continent. Who dares to provoke me? I'll win my life by lying down, setting foot on the 3 continents, walking crab steps. My father is the Sky Inspecting Minister. Do you admit defeat? Wishaoduo's mind was in turmoil. He was in the mood for poetry. He actually recited a few poems on the spot. At the Sun Moon Pass, I'll be the first. When I meet a strong enemy, I'll shout. My father is the Sky Inspecting Minister. Do you dare to make a move on me? Wishaoduo let his imagination run wild. Inner core cultivation, heavenly king guts, military achievements in battle. Tyrannical at the Sun Moon Pass, little Yin Yin in my arms. So cool. Wishaoduo was fascinated. It had to be said that this dream and these words were really Wishaoduo. Stop dreaming. Li Chenglong angrily slapped the back of Wishaoduo's head. You are really something. Why don't you think about how old the Sky Inspecting Minister is? At your age, even if you become the great 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 great. Swa, do you know that you're blaspheming him? I won't say anything on a normal day, but that's the minister. The minister, you understand? What kind of noble status is that? How can you blaspheme it? You're right. It's really impossible. Xiaoduo was disappointed. By the way, you're familiar with the history of the continent. Do you know the surname of the Sky Sentinel minister? Xiaoduo asked suddenly. I heard that. Her surname is Zhua. Li Chenglong looked at Xiaoduo as if he had just discovered a new continent. I have the same surname as you. They all have the extremely rare surname of Zhua. Xiaoduo immediately became spirited again. Swollen, do you think I'm the great? Even if the effect is different, it's almost the same. Maybe, back then, the sky-inspecting minister spared mercy everywhere and left our bloodline in Phoenix City. You don't know, but even though my parents didn't have any cultivation, they were blessed with great fortune. They were blessed by the heavens and looked down on their peers. Xiaoduo's eyes were dreamy as he let his imagination run wild. The surname is Zhua. That's a good surname. Maybe it's the real Zhua. While Xiaoduo was indulging in his imagination, he kept running his mouth, attracting the attention of many students. Li Chenglong, who was walking with him, was both embarrassed and angry. He slapped Xiaoduo's head again and dragged him away. Sigh, Zhua. Although I also hope that you can have some connections. That way, I can also get some benefits. Unfortunately, this dream is too beautiful. Even if you're good-looking, you can't dream so beautifully. The two of them entered the classroom, when Xingtian's gaze suddenly turned and looked at the two of them. After a long time, he turned his head and spoke with some disappointment. How many people in our class have broken through to the nascent soul stage? Or rather, how many people are confident of breaking through to the nascent soul stage in a few days? When Xingtian said, I can. Me too. I'm already at the nascent soul stage. More than 20 people raised their hands, including Xiang Chong, Meng Zhongjun, Zhen Piapiao, and Hao Han. They were all at the nascent soul stage. As for Xiang Bing and the others, they were on the verge of breaking through. Some were just a hair's breadth away, while others were trying their best to suppress their true essence. When Xingtian's eyes were even more worried. Li Chenglong, what about you? When Xingtian turned his head and asked, I'm now. Swollen calculated. He had suppressed his true essence 10 times now. He was almost at his limit. If he suppressed it one more time, he would have to break through to the nascent soul stage. I estimate I will break through to the nascent soul stage in 2 days. Xiaoduo, what about you? When Xingtian's eyes were filled with eager expectation and anxiety. This was a great opportunity. If Xiaoduo missed it because of suppressing his true essence, it would be a pity. Xiaoduo took a breath and said, Give me 3 days of vacation. I will definitely break through the current realm and reach the nascent soul stage. 3 days of vacation was equivalent to 120 days in the Tower of Annihilation. It was enough. Even if the side effects of taking the 9 Heaven Spirit Spring were added, it was still enough to recover. Good. When Xingtian's eyes lit up. At this moment, his eyes became resplendent and dazzling, flickering with light. When Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong said that they could break through in a short time, when Xingtian felt his whole body relax. He knew very well that the geniuses of the 3 continents would enter the Mystery Land. If Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong did not lead the team, perhaps less than half of the 20 students in his class would come out alive. It was even possible that they would all be wiped out. Although they were all geniuses, they did not have any advantage over their peers. At least, they did not have the overwhelming strength advantage like Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong. Once they were besieged by several enemies, one of them would be killed almost instantly, especially the actual combat experience of life and death. Even if they were not extremely lacking, it was still not optimistic. However, with Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong leading the team, the situation was completely different. These two guys, one was smart and the other was steady. One was invincible among his peers in martial arts, and the other was wise and smart. With the two of them as the core, they were a perfect pair and were bound to be invincible. This way, our class can enter the mystery land. 25 people. Is there anyone else? When Xingtian looked at the remaining people and said, "This may be the biggest growth opportunity in your life. If you can break through in a short time, even if you can suppress your true origin 1 or 2 times, it is worth a try." Pai Yibao raised his hand and said, "I can." Good, then add Pai Yibao. Is there anyone else? When Xingtian looked at the others, his eyes full of eagerness. This will be a turning point that will determine your future. But there is also a possibility that you will die in the middle of the road. Students, you must consider this carefully in your hearts. I hope that there will be as many as possible. When Xingtian said, "Children, I don't know the details, but I can say that this is definitely a training exercise for the 3 continents. It is also the birth of the 3 continents' true seeds. This kind of experience is something that you will only encounter once in your life. However, those of the inner core realm who have not suppressed 6 times should not think about entering. It is meaningless to force yourself to enter." When Xingtian said, "Those of you who have suppressed more than 7 times, raise your hand." Walala, more than 10 hands were raised. Good. When Xingtian took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. What resources do you lack for a breakthrough? I will be your guarantor. Borrow from the school first. Try to make your breakthrough as stable and reliable as possible. There is no harm in borrowing more. When Xingtian was cutting off all means of retreat, if the students could make it out alive, then everything would be fine. But for those who died, the borrowed resources would be repaid by him as the guarantor. But when Xingtian felt that even if he could repay this debt, it would be worth it to teach in the Hidden Dragon School for the rest of his life. If possible, I am willing to mortgage my next life as well. I only hope that they can go further and not miss this opportunity. Chapter 761. Class 1, 42 people. When Xingtian recorded the data and hurried out. 10 minutes later, he came back. Those who lack resources to break through, stay back. Those who have suppressed less than 6 times, go to the field or the gravity room to train on your own. Those who have the confidence to break through, go home immediately and prepare for it. After you break through, report to the school as soon as possible. It doesn't matter even if it's the middle of the night. Remember, it's the first time. Zhua Xiaoduo, Li Chenglong. Both of you report to the principal's office. Yes. Zhua Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong walked out. The two of them looked at each other and felt an irrepressible excitement in their hearts. Big news. The two of them walked to the principal's office in a rare silence. They could vaguely feel that the unique opportunity of a lifetime was about to arrive. When they were about to reach the principal's office, Li Chenglong suddenly slowed down his footsteps. He spoke slowly and solemnly to Zhua Xiaoduo. "Zhua, I can clearly feel that a brand new life for me is about to begin from this moment." Zhua Xiaoduo grinned. "I feel the same. We're about to start a brand new life together. We're still going to hold hands and move forward together." Li Chenglong was not the only one who felt this way. Even Zhua Xiaoduo had a similar feeling. That feeling was even more real than Li Chenglong's. It was as if he could reach out and touch it. It was a very mysterious but very real feeling. It was as if the road of destiny was right in front of him. The door had been opened for him and Li Chenglong to step into it. However, the two of them had different personalities. Li Chenglong was calm, cautious, and serious. Zhua Xiaoduo, on the other hand, had the mentality of "fuck you. If you want to come, then come. If you don't want to come, then don't come." If you want to come, then I'll take you. If you don't want to come, then it's fine. Therefore, to a certain extent, Zhuo was purely being urged and forced to move forward by one thing after another. It was like a whip, lashing him forward. He had no choice but to leave. However, Li Chenglong was different. Li Chenglong knew what he wanted to do from the very beginning. He had always had a clear goal and walked towards his own path, moving forward steadily. But at the same time, he understood very well that he lacked the temperament of a leader, the temperament of a desperado, and the courage to face problems. There was always a little bit of overcautious thinking and overall consideration. This kind of thinking was not bad and could even be said to be more beneficial for the survival of the team. However, with this kind of character, no matter how high his martial arts cultivation was, he could only be a support in some matters. Li Chenglong had understood his own heart. Therefore, he had looked for Zhuo and had set Zhuo as his goal. He had made a bet in his life. If he was right, then he would be right. If he was wrong, then he would return to Phoenix City and become a teacher. The reason why Li Chenglong had made such a bet was because he had found that Zhuo would always encounter some strange and dangerous things. And these things were like whips, lashing Zhuo to move forward. Li Chenglong had positioned himself as Zhuo's support. Therefore, Zhuo was lashed to move forward, and Li Chenglong himself was naturally forced to move forward. He had walked and walked all the way to where he was now. Li Chenglong felt that the road in front of him had suddenly become clear. This was probably the feeling he had. Perhaps this is the beginning of a brand new life. Li Chenglong silently said to himself. Then, he and Zhuo knocked on the door of the principal's office. On the other side, Shangjingyan High School. Long Yusheng, Wanli Xiao, Zhou Yunqing, and the others were also called to the principal's office. All of you have a part in this experiential learning. The task of leading the nascent Soul Stage team will be given to the three of you. Principal, Wanli Xiao, and I are not candidates to lead the team. We are only suitable to be led. We understand our own characters. We are used to accepting and completing tasks. Not only are we not used to leading others, but we also lack the ability to lead others. So, Zhou Yunqing will be the team leader. That's good. The principal of Yunwan High School couldn't help but look at Long Yusheng and Wanli Xiao. At this age, it was rare to have such a clear understanding of one's own character. It was commendable. Most of the peers of this age had been regarded as geniuses for too long. Everyone felt that they were the best in the world. The arrogance of the world's protagonists, who despised the world, dissipated from their bodies. Even the principal didn't expect that these two little guys were the kind of people who didn't need to be beaten up by society to recognize themselves. How rare. In addition, after entering the ruins, we may be dissociated from our school's basic sequence. Long Yusheng reported. Wanli Xiao nodded vigorously. Her eyes were full of anticipation. Dissociated? Why is that? The principal frowned. The scope of this activity is so wide that it covers the entire continent of astral souls. That means that our boss will also go. Long Yusheng's eyes lit up as he replied. I miss you guys so much. Yes, our boss will also go. We will be reunited. Wanli Xiao nodded. The principal was silent for a moment. You are allowed to dissociate. However, if possible, you must assist Captain Zhou. Of course. Thank you, Principal. Dragon Soul High School. Li Zhongming arrived at the principal's office with sleepy eyes. Experiential learning in the Starlight Mountain Range? Okay, Captain? No. I'm a person who sleeps every day. How can I be a captain? So what if my cultivation is high? Besides, after going there, I will definitely leave the team. How can I be a captain? No? Then there's no choice. We haven't seen each other for a long time. This time, we have to gather together. Half and half. Okay, I'll see. There was also a dark cave on Jade Sun High School's side. The sounds of battle, the whistling of swords, the roars of star beasts, the sounds of mountains collapsing and the earth cracking. All of these sounds were unceasingly heard along with the screams of star beasts. After a long time, it finally quieted down completely. With a muffled sound, the door of the cave was opened. A ray of light shone into the cave. Teacher Luo Yinling's distressed voice sounded, "Mo Yin, come out." In the darkness, a thin figure slowly walked out from the depths of the cave. The tip of his sword was still dripping with blood. That figure was Mo Yin. Mo Yin's cheeks were even thinner. His eyes were flickering like will-o'-the-wisps. His entire body was dripping with blood. Some of it was his, and some of it was the star beast's. This was his hellish training. The cave he was in was filled with soul transformation and cloud transformation realm star beasts. There were hundreds and thousands of them. Of course, there were also corresponding cultivation resources inside. This was an extremely cruel training ground that Jade Sun High School had specially created to complement the 18-held disc cultivation method. But ever since it was built, there had never been a student who could stay in there for 3 full days. Even if it was only half a day at a time, it was still very rare. Moyin, on the other hand, had already spent several months here. In the past few days, he had not come out at all. He had been staying in there all the time. "Teacher Luo, you came at the right time." Mo Yin walked out straight. Teacher Luo Yinling could clearly feel that there was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood rushing towards her. Even though she was much more powerful than Mo Yin, she still felt her heart palpitating. It was as if it was not a person walking toward her. It was not her student, but a ferocious beast that was about to devour her. "What's wrong? I have killed all the star beasts here. I have to stop this special training." Mo Yin's tone was indifferent. He said, "I just completed the 10th suppression of the inner core realm and broke through to the soul transformation realm. Is there a higher level special training area in the school?" "That's great," Luo Yinling said happily. "You broke through at this time. It's a godsend. The Star Mark relic is about to open. You can go there for the trial. Maybe you can see your old friends." Mo Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. "Really? Of course it's true." Luo Yinling only felt a burst of sadness. She understood how unsociable this child was, how lonely he was, and how hard-working he was. He had squeezed everything out of himself and was cultivating with all his might, trying his best to become stronger. There was only one sentence in his mouth. "They are much faster than me. I have to catch up with them. I have to try my best to catch up. They must be much faster than me." What class reunion, what class meal, what girls confessing their love, what boys gossiping, what school activities, what? None of these matters were in his heart. From the beginning to the end, he was like a straight sword, rushing forward. Even if the sword was broken, he was still rushing forward. He did not care about the consequences at all. He did not even care about his own body. He only had one wish. When he saw his previous friends, he could smile and say something. "I have not been left behind by you. We are still on the same level. If you have any problems in the future, remember to call me. I'll be there anytime. I don't want to be unable to help you if you have any problems." Mo Yin silently followed Luo Yinling out of the cave and walked towards the dormitory. Behind him, the bloody footprints became fainter and fainter as he walked. "First, treat the wounds on your body. Take some pills to recover your inner yuan. Then, go to the nutrition cabin and lie down for a while." Luo Yinling's heart ached. "It's okay." Mo Yan's care for Luo Yinling was a little unnatural, especially the warm feeling in his heart. It made him feel very uncomfortable. The school also prepared a lot of resources for you. Mo Yin, in this trial, there are less than 30 people in our entire school, including the seniors. And among the freshmen, you're the only one who has reached the nascent soul stage. Then can I leave the school team? Mo Yin was silent for a while. "This time, I want to fight side by side with them. It's been a long time." Chapter 762. Our school doesn't have a team order, since the number of people joining is so small. So when you join, you'll naturally be separated into other teams. Luo Yinling said, "Which team do you want to join? You just need to apply, and you should be able to get in." "I know. Thank you, Teacher Luo." Mo Yan's stiff face showed a trace of happiness. "Also, your sword, it's time to change." Luo Yinling said, "This is the sword that the principal gave you. This sword is called Demon Soul. It's an ancient sword. Use it well. Umo Yin took the demon's soul, took it out, and looked at it. The cold light was dazzling and threatening. On the sword, there was a faint blood color. It was obviously a sword of killing. Who knows how many people's blood it had already drunk. He silently put the sword back into the sheath and picked up his own sword. It was the sword that Zhuo had given to Yu Moyin in Phoenix City. At this moment, it was full of holes like a deformed saw blade. Umo Yin silently looked at it for a long time, then put the sword and the scabbard back into his space ring, then held the demon's soul in his hand. He faintly felt a little uncomfortable. It's not as good as my own sword, but this sword is better. I'll see if I can find a craftsman to fix this sword. What you need now is rest. Luo Yinling said, You have 1 day to rest. After 1 day, you'll be leaving with the team. This time the vice principal will be leading the team. Okay. Umo Yin took 2 steps back, then suddenly bowed deeply. Thank you, Teacher Luo. In this life, I will never forget you. Luo Yinling's eyes reddened. She knew deeply this trial may be the beginning of Umo Yin's rise. In the future, whether or not he will return to Jade Sun High School, it's hard to say. About Yin Luo Yinling hesitated. During the competition, Luo Yinling once said that she would introduce her daughter to Umo Yin. Although at that time, it was just a joke, no one took it seriously. But when Umo Yin really came to Jade Sun High School, Luo Yinling found more and more that this Umo Yin was really a piece of unpolished gold jade. Such a talent. It's the dream son-in-law candidate of all parents. Naturally, he was really tempted by the idea. Most importantly, his daughter was also a rare genius. She was definitely worthy of Umo Yin. Her daughter had interacted with Umo Yin a few times. Although there was no progress between them, Umo Yin's personality was cold and indifferent. His daughter, on the other hand, seemed to have fallen into the trap. Luo Yinling wanted to fight for her daughter and see what Umo Yin's attitude was. Speaking of this topic, Umo Yin's somewhat dark face blushed a rare shade of red. At this moment, in Luo Yinling's eyes, this was clearly a bashful feeling. Luo Yinling almost suspected that she had seen wrongly. This kid actually had such a side to him. Big Sister Yin. She's very good. Yu Moyin licked his lips and said dryly, If the world is peaceful in the future, and Sister Yin is still interested, I will marry her. Luo Yinling sighed helplessly in her heart. She smiled and said, Okay. However, he sighed in his heart. The world was at peace. Things had changed since then. The minister had started conscripting soldiers from all over the country. The war of survival had begun. Would the world be at peace? She was the teacher of Jade Sun High Martial Arts Academy. Naturally, she knew the truth behind this training. Regarding the future, it was hard to be too optimistic. Teacher Luo, you must take care of yourself too. Umo Yin was dressed in black, as usual. He quietly walked out of the infirmary. The wounds on his body were simply bandaged. He didn't enter the nutrition cabin. Yu Moyin actually hated entering the nutrition cabin to heal his body. The most direct reason was that the nutrition cabin would remove all the scars on his body. He sat alone in the corner of the field, amidst the tall weeds, and carefully recalled every wound on his body. This wound, what was the situation at that time? Actually, I can treat it another way. Can it be gentler? Or can it be avoided? The other wound was that kind of situation. I was not calm at that time. Maybe I can treat it that way. However, I was in the middle of a battle and did not have time to think. I just relied on my instincts. Or my instincts. Did I train in the wrong direction? Until he thought about all the wounds on his body and corrected them all. Umo Yin took out a bottle of living holy water and drank it. Then he continued to sit in the thick weeds. All these years I've been alone. The wind has passed. The rain has gone. Umo Yin sang in a low voice. This was the only song he knew. Every time he sang this song, he sang it as if he was very lonely, very lonely. But this time, he sang a little joyfully. I'm going to meet my brothers soon. Umo Yin. A girl's crisp and soft voice suddenly sounded. Sister Yin? Umo Yin was stunned. He looked towards the direction of the voice and saw a slim figure walking over on the weeds. Her beautiful face was full of determination. I'm going to the training this time. I'm in the nascent soul realm like you. We're both in the nascent soul group. The girl said. UMO, Yin nodded woodenly. Sister Yin was in the 2nd grade. She was 1 grade higher than him. She was also the chief of the 2nd grade. It was normal for them to participate in the training together. Why did he feel a little happy? UMO Yin, when the time comes, which team do you want to join? Let's go together, okay? Okay. So it's settled then. Yes. Then, I'm leaving? The girl's eyes flashed with hope. Yes. Idiot. The girl pouted. She turned around and walked a few steps. She couldn't help but stomp her feet angrily. Suddenly, she couldn't help but turn around. UMO Yin, when the world is peaceful, you said you'll marry me. Are you serious? The girl asked shyly. UMO Yin was stunned. After a while, he said, yes. The girl laughed cheerfully. Then I'll wait for you. But what if you marry someone else in the future? After all, the world is peaceful. I don't know how many years it will take. UMO Yin was silent for a while. He said in a low voice, if you wait for me. He was silent for a while, just when the girl thought he wouldn't say anything else and was about to leave in disappointment. She heard UMO Yin say softly, if you wait for me. If I can't marry you, I won't marry for the rest of my life. Idiot. The girl's eyes curved like a crescent moon. Zhou Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong entered the principal's office. Enchanting laughed loudly. Our team leader and vice leader are here. What team leader? Zhou Xiaoduo was shocked. The Hidden Dragon Academy has sent 400 soul transformation cultivators to the ruins. The 2 of you are the team leader and vice leader that I personally appointed. Zhou Xiaoduo, team leader. Li Chenglong, vice leader. Yi Changqing laughed. I'm the team leader? I can be the team leader? Zhou Xiaoduo was confused. He really didn't have a confidence. You're just a spiritual leader. Yi Changqing said. You're invincible among your peers. If you don't become the team leader, who will? Who would be convinced if someone else did it? Principal, you're right. What you said makes a lot of sense. Wow. Zhou Xiaoduo laughed complacently. Of course, the other important thing for you to be the team leader is to suppress the entire team. Yi Changqing said. Other than that, the vice leader will be in charge of the other matters. What do you mean? I mean, you're just a figurehead. If you encounter someone who doesn't agree with you, you'll suppress them. As for other matters, you don't have to worry about how to lead the team, how to move, how to plan. No command authority? What command authority do you want? Don't you have a vice leader? So Xiaoduo's mind turned. Suddenly, he looked like a Spartan. Then, am I not a puppet? Yi Changqing glared at him. Why don't you just take charge? You'll be justified? No. So Xiaoduo shook his head and said, I'll just be an awesome team leader. Just like the Sky Patrol minister, I'll be the spiritual leader. As for other matters, I'll just be a puppet. You dare to compare yourself with the minister. Yi Changqing said, but he was thinking about many things in his heart. Surname's what? Damn, this kid's surname is Zhua. This surname is really good. Principal, Zhou Xiaoduo excitedly said. Sir Minister Inspecting Heaven is also surnamed Zhua. Do you think that Sir Minister Inspecting Heaven is an ancestor of my family? Yi Changqing choked for a moment. Then he was furious. Get out. Zhou Xiaoduo grinned and took Li Chenglong out of the office building. He saw Gao Qiao, standing in front of the door with a few nascent soul transformation stage used from the Gao family. Captain Zhua, Vice Leader Li, please take care of us. Zhou Xiaoduo's eyes lit up. You're going to? Of course. Then it'll be easy this time. Zhou Xiaoduo laughed. It turned out that there were so many people helping him. Our trial this time will be an unprecedentedly high level of danger. Gao Qiao's face was very solemn. The Umno Alliance and the Dao League will also have their own geniuses entering, and they have the same number of people as us. I believe that their quality will not be inferior to ours. But how can the opportunities inside provide for 24,000 geniuses? It's impossible to distribute them evenly. Even if we take 10,000 steps back and assume that the resources are abundant and can be evenly distributed, the Wizard Alliance and the Dao Alliance will definitely want to take more. Of course, we also have the same thought. Based on this premise, it's inevitable that we'll be at odds with each other and even fight against each other. There will be casualties and deaths if there are battles. I believe that the UMNO Alliance and the Tao League will never talk about morality with us. And the Tao League Alliance is basically disbanded in this matter. So this time, although it may be an amazing opportunity, it may also be a life and death crisis. Gao Xiao said seriously, 3 days later, when the list is out, I will inform all the nascent soul transformation stage students who entered this time to gather with Zhua and Vice Leader Li. At that time, Vice Leader Li, please tell us the situation and share some experience. Chapter 763. Good. That's not a problem. Li Qinglong nodded. He could hear that Gao Xiao didn't have the slightest intention of mocking him this time. She wasn't even considering him. She was really doing something. It was impossible for 400 nascent soul students to enter this relic without a unified command and clear orders. If they fought separately, they would only be defeated by the enemy one by one, and all of them would die. Gao Xiao had extraordinary schemes and means, but she didn't have the ability to convince the masses. At this time, the ability to convince the masses was the most important part. It was the prerequisite for everything. Even if you had heaven-defying wisdom and peerless wisdom, if everyone didn't listen to you, you would be blind and unable to do anything. But this problem could be solved perfectly by Zhuo. Even without Zhuo, Li Qinglong could solve it perfectly. Everyone was in the nascent soul realm. You're not convinced, right? Come out. I'll beat you until you're convinced. You're not convinced, right? Come out. I'll beat you until you're convinced. Force might not be the most effective means, but in special circumstances, it was the fastest and most immediate means. Okay, Li Qinglong agreed. Gao Xiao said, when the time comes, Zhuo only needs to appear and control the situation. Zhuo was in high spirits. Do you need me to make a move to intimidate them? Hearing this, Gao Xiao couldn't help but be embarrassed by this guy. She was speechless for a long time. Ever since the battle between you and Bing Xiaobing in the arena, the whole school was directly convinced by you. Now, do you still need to make a move? This guy clearly wanted to show off his prowess. Ahem, you guys go back first. I still have to report some things to Zhuo. Gao Xiao secretly rolled her eyes and drove the others away. This is the progress of the material processing. Gao Xiao took out a piece of paper from a space ring. Give me what I should. The process isn't important. So Xiaoduo waved his hand and said generously. He looked like a big boss who didn't need to look at it. I'm not worried about the Gao clan. Gao Xiao rolled her eyes again. You sent such a wretched guy who values money as much as his life to supervise by the side. Of course you're worried. By the way, how's your cooperation with Mr. Fong going? Are you happy with each other? So Xiaoduo asked. Director Fong is indeed a talent. Although she didn't have a good impression of that wretched guy, Gao Xiao didn't deny Fong Yinua's ability to do things. He was indeed very strong. Mr. Fong is managing the company on his own now, so there's no problem. The business under his jurisdiction has also expanded to a certain extent. Although his methods are slightly harsh, the results are excellent. In particular, President Fong is a smooth and slick person who is always smiling. He also gets along well with the people of the Gao family, so there are few grudges between us. Gao Xiao sighed faintly. How could they not be harmonious? Not only was that guy slick and slick, but he was also very good at dealing with people. Every day, he would bring his uncles out to look for female martial artists. However, the source of this matter was the uncles who wanted to corrupt President Fong. However, they never expected that President Fong had already corrupted himself to such an extent that, after doing this a few times, Director Fong actually became very successful in this industry. He even turned around and introduced his uncles to people they liked. This result and operation was really too embarrassing. What was even more embarrassing was that all the food, drinks, entertainment, and all the expenses were all paid by President Fong himself. He didn't use a single cent of the company's money and took advantage of them at all. They didn't know where this guy got the money. In short, He was so extravagant that it was scary that his other abilities still needed time to be considered. However, his ability to use money and his inhumane nature were daunting and admirable. Gao Qiao even suspected that President Fong was a part-time general manager during the day and a masked thief at night, that, naturally, Gao Qiao didn't know that her suspicions were the truth. With regards to Zhua Xiao's money, Fong Yinhua didn't dare to embezzle even a single cent. However, Manager Fong had plenty of ways to earn money. For example, he would stroll around the treasure vaults of the various large clans and companies at night, strolling around the most ridiculous time. Someone had just bought a treasure from him, and he stole it back that night. A few days later, he openly put it up for auction again. When others asked, President Fong said with conviction, "I really couldn't tell that it was that item." That day, a manager suddenly came up to collect it. "If you really lost it, this matter. The company is too big, and we also feel a little uncomfortable. Why don't you buy it back at half price?" In the face of such an honest explanation, the thief's family was helpless. Once you've paid for the item, it's yours. If you didn't take good care of it and it was stolen, the auction house would buy it back from the thief. No matter how strange the process was, you couldn't just take it for free, right? The whole company was thriving because of Fong Yinhua, and it had a lot of money. However, it also had a foul atmosphere. It was unbearable to look at it directly. It had almost completely turned into a man's paradise. Gao Qiao simply let it go. "President Fong, you are so capable, you can do it yourself. Anyway, the Gao family has shares in the company. Anyway, the Gao family will be the ones doing the work." However, they didn't know that this was Fong Yinhua's ultimate goal. That night, he called Zhua Xiaoduo to tell him the good news. "Boss, I've succeeded in seizing the power of the class. You can rest assured. Now our company is full of security." Zhua Xiaoduo didn't know what to say. He just let it be and let it be. After receiving 15,000 high-quality jade of astral souls, Zhua Xiaoduo and Li Qinglong returned to the first class and stayed for a few minutes before going home. They quickly went home to cultivate and break through. It seems that the high-quality jade of astral souls in Fenghai is really out of stock. Zhua Xiaoduo sighed faintly. The resources that he had given Gao Qiao were worth at least a few 100,000 high-grade star soul jades, not to mention a lot. Moreover, Fong Yinhua and Gao Qiao had been so busy. After such a long time, they only managed to collect so few high-quality jade of astral souls. Although they still had tens of billions of Star Origin coins, what was the use of having so many Star Origin coins now? When they had too much money, it would not only be a number, but it would also depreciate. They would not be able to buy it anymore. Li Qinglong was called over by Wen Xingtian. He didn't know what to do, so Xiaoduo went home first and stored the space-destroying pagoda in order to absorb the heat from the heart of the ardent sun in the pagoda. As Xiaoduo continued to absorb the heat emitted by the heart of the ardent sun was much less than before. It seemed that it wouldn't be long before he could get his hands on it to cultivate. So Xiaoduo was quite obedient this time. Although he entered the space-destroying pagoda, he didn't disturb Zhua Xiaoyan, who was cultivating. After he came out, he immediately called Fong Yinhua and told her to continue preparing the Star Bee storage and recharge the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger. Although the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger's auxiliary effect continued to decrease, it was still a considerable help. It could at least be maintained until he broke through to the nascent soul transformation stage or even the cloud transformation stage. After informing Fong Yinhua, he made a trip to Boss Sun's place, intending to take away the Star Soul Jade powder he had received during this period of time. Then, holding on to the slightest bit of hope, he made another trip outside the city, to the place where the white-robed lady had dumped the Star Soul Jade powder. Maybe there was more? When he went over to take a look, Zhua Xiaoduo was really shocked. He was just hoping that there would be more. But in the end, it was more than that. There were simply too many. Not only was the underground space completely filled, but a small mountain had also been piled up on the surface. However, a lot of it had been scattered in all directions by the meteorites, and a lot of it had been wasted. After all, The astral soul's jade powder that was mixed with impurities could not be used as stingy as was Xiaoduo was. He could not help but feel heartache. Damned meteorite. Sigh. Hurry up and start packing. The harvest this time was almost twice as much as the previous time, and there was still a surplus. It could be said that they were returning from a rewarding journey. If a worker wants to do his job well, he must first sharpen his tools. Since he was going to start his closed-door cultivation, he had to collect as many of these things as possible. So Xiaoduo would never give up anything that he deserved. Only when he got his hands on it would it belong to him. It didn't matter if it was useful or not. If it was useless, at most, President Fong would sell it again in the Void Extermination Tower. Xiaolong was working hard to move the items. He was also grinning from ear to ear. It was really too awesome now. The amount of Astral Soul's jade powder that he had collected during this period of time had shocked me. I could not control myself. No, I have to go out tonight to move another half of my meridian in. Poor Xiaolong. Sigh. Wimmels would come in. I want to eat. Zwididi. Sob sob. When Xiaoduo returned home, Zwi Chonglu and Wu Yuding were lying on the deck chairs on the terrace, rocking back and forth, looking very comfortable. Zwi Xiaoduo's eyes were full of envy as he looked at them. My parents are so happy and carefree. This is the life I have always dreamed of. However, the most important thing now was to quickly break through to the nascent soul stage. Everything else could be left for later. Time was too tight. After a few words with his parents, Xiaoduo plunged into the Void Extermination Tower and worked hard to cultivate. The resource reserves were basically in place. After 5 days in the Void Extermination Tower, Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan, who had been in seclusion for half a month, came out for dinner. Mom and Dad were leaving. We will go back tomorrow. Wu Yuding's eyes were full of reluctance to part with her son and daughter. She gazed at them for a long time. When they went back this time, it might be a few years before they could meet again. Also, they might not be able to meet face to face. After all, they had to prepare for their return this time. Okay, so Xiaoduo ate in big mouthfuls, just like when they were at home. His mother's cooking was really delicious. This time, we will probably have to go back. Both of you have to be well. Wu Yuding stroked the hair of her son and daughter with both hands and smiled. Both of you must be healthy and stable. Chapter 764. Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned when he heard this. He raised his head with a big steamed bun in his mouth and asked, "So soon?" "Yes, we feel that we have an opportunity to recover." Zhuo Zhonglu smiled faintly and said, "The family will only be on tenterhooks if we delay any further. So, we might as well do it earlier. The earlier we recover, the earlier we can return. Wouldn't that be better?" Zhuo Xiaoyan still felt uneasy. Her eyes were full of worry, and the spoon in her bowl slid unconsciously. She said uneasily, "Dad, Mom, you really didn't lie to us, right?" Wu Yuding chuckled and said, "How about this? If we don't call or video call you in 3 months after we go back, you can stab yourself with a knife and get even with us. Why are you so paranoid?" So Xiaoduo panicked and said, "Miss Cat, you can be paranoid, but you can't be so paranoid. Why do you even suspect Dad and Mom?" So Xiaoyan blushed and said, "Mom, look at what you're saying. How can I not believe you? Don't listen to nonsense." "Humph." Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and said, "Have you ever trusted us in this matter?" So Xiaoyan smiled embarrassedly. So Xiaoduo also smiled embarrassedly. Both of them were on tenterhooks, worried that their parents wouldn't come back. They were just leaving them as a memento. That would be too sad. Over the past few days, Zhuo Xiaoduo had to read his parents' fortune a few times a day. In the end, he decided to use all 10 drops of Providence points together. However, no matter how he looked at them, they were still healthy and had a smooth life. That was all there was to an auspicious life. For this reason, he even deducted Xiaolong's rations. "Dad, Mom, how high are your cultivations?" So Xiaoduo could not help but feel scared. "You don't have any cultivation now, but why can't I see your faces?" Zhuo Zhonglu coughed and said with a frown, "No matter how miraculous your physiognomy is, it still depends on a person's physiognomy. We are not sitting here in person, so it would be strange if you could tell." Xiaoduo felt more and more conflicted. Obviously, his fortune was the same as Zhuo Xiaoyan's. He was still afraid that his parents would lie to him. In fact, the truth was that he did not have long to live. You two can think whatever you want. Time will prove the truth. Wu Yuding and Zhuo Zhonglu were speechless at this point. They had clearly warned him in advance, so why was he still being so wishy-washy? Who'd he take after? Neither of them had such a problem. Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan looked at each other, indicating that they would talk in private later. Zhuo Xiaoduo said with a drooling face, "Dad, Mom, did you see the sky inspecting minister token today?" "We saw it." "Why?" Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding looked at each other. "Why are you asking?" Zhuo Xiaoduo said excitedly, "Dad, Mom, the sky inspecting minister's surname is also Zhuo." "Oh, so what?" Zhuo Chonglu was puzzled. What was this kid trying to say? Zhuo Xiaoduo lowered his voice and said sneakily, "Dad, Mom, the people with the surname Zhuo are not as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, but they're still quite rare, right? You say, think about it. Could our Zhuo family have the bloodline of the heaven-inspecting minister after many generations?" Puff. Wu Yuding spat out a mouthful of tea and coughed incessantly. Zhuo Chonglu was shocked by this sentence. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He held the mouthful of tea in his mouth, but could not spit it out or swallow it. Wheeze. It was the tea in his mouth. Anyway, the more I think about it, the more I think it's possible. Dad, Mom, your son is not a person who seeks fame and fortune, but at least with a good background, this life will be a lot easier. Zhuo Xiaoduo winked mysteriously. Dad, Mom, if it's true, how happy would that be? Our family could really be the great-grandson of the great-grandson of the sky, inspecting minister's great-grandson. For a moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo's imagination was running wild. Maybe it's the direct bloodline. Dad, the issue of your background is worth paying attention to. Zhuo Chonglu was speechless. Nonsense. He swallowed that mouthful of tea with great difficulty. I'm not joking. It's really possible, Dad. Zhuo Xiaoduo said anxiously, it's really possible that the sky-inspecting minister left behind an erotic love story in Phoenix City. Then there was our family. After many years, there was you, and then you had me. Puffed. Cough, cough, cough. Cough, cough. Wu Yuding coughed until she was almost out of breath. She patted her chest and took a deep breath, but she still could not hold it in. Zhuo Chonglu's face was dark. How can the sky-inspecting minister be such a despicable person? Don't talk nonsense. Zhuo Chonglu's palms stretched and retracted. He had the urge to hit someone. Zhuo Xiaoduo disagreed. Dad, don't be intimidated by the reputation of those big shots. Which one of these big shots is not lustful? Look at those TV dramas. They're all lustful. Maybe this sky-inspecting minister is an old hooligan in his bones. Who knows how rotten his private life is? Who can say for sure? At such an old age, how many women have he had? Maybe he can't even remember. Shut up. You shut up for me, Zhuo Chonglu said fiercely. How can you talk about the great heroic leader behind his back like that? Cough, cough, cough. Wu Yuding choked again. She rolled her eyes and said, You don't say. Maybe Doggy is right. Maybe the Sky Patrol minister is really a womanizer. Maybe he has blossomed in Phoenix City and left behind his bloodline. Is it really impossible? Besides, he's so old. It's normal for him to have a lot of women, right? What do you say, Dad? What do I say? What do I say? Zhuo Chonglu could not hold it in anymore. He suddenly stood up. We're leaving tomorrow. Let's look at the stars in Fenghai City tonight. His face was red as dates. He hurried upstairs and occupied a recliner. He left in a somewhat sorry state. Mom, is there really no hope? Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at Wu Yuding and said anxiously, This is the bloodline. This is a great opportunity to reach the heavens in one step. This is a great opportunity to be a salted fish. My lifelong wish. To be a salted fish. My biggest regret is that I am not the second generation. Sigh. I really don't know if your dad has the bloodline of the sky-inspecting minister, but it's hard to say. After all, they are both surnames Zhuo. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and said, When I go back this time, I will look through our family's genealogy. Mom, then you must look through it carefully. Duo said attentively, "Don't miss any important clues. Even the slightest clue is good." Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and left her seat without saying a word. As she walked, she laughed nonstop. Originally, he had been filled with sorrow of parting, but this brat had made it all disappear, and he had almost burst his belly from laughing. But this kid guessed right. There was no mistake at all. Didn't the sky inspecting minister bear fruit in Phoenix City and leave behind his bloodline? How could this be fake? It couldn't be any more real. He was definitely the direct descendant. The only seedling in 30 million miles that Duo cleaned up the dishes while Xiaonian went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. When Duo finished cleaning up the table, he walked quickly to the kitchen and hugged her slender waist naturally. He said, "Nian Nian Mao. Call me sister." "Okay, Sister Nian Mao." "Sister Nian Mao, about Dad and Mom." Duo hugged her slender waist and began to talk about business. He took advantage of her and talked about business without delay. Xiaonian also became serious when she heard this. She said as she washed the dishes, "Although I don't think it's fake, I'm still afraid." "Me too." Duo sighed. "Do you think Dad and Mom will go overboard?" "I don't think so." Xiaonian frowned. "It's a pity that we're too weak and can't help at all. It's fine as long as it's not fake. It'll take about 3 months. After that, everything will be clear." Duo's heart calmed down. His intuition told him that this was definitely true, but as a son, he couldn't help but worry about gains and losses. He was afraid that something unexpected would happen. And Xiaonian had the same thoughts as him. This was definitely true, but his heart was in a mess. It was always hanging in the air, and he couldn't calm down. "Sister Nian Mao." "Sigh." Xiaonian sighed and turned to look at him helplessly. "You'd better be called Nian Mao." The words Nian Nian Sister Cat sounded weird no matter how he heard it. If others heard it, they might misunderstand. "Okay, Nian Mao." Duo revealed a wretched smile behind Xiaonian. "It seems that from now on, Nian Mao will be my exclusive name. It won't be restricted anymore." Ha ha ha! That Nian Mao was indeed dumb. She didn't even correct him to call her little Nian Mao. "It seems that my hypnosis is good. It's like a fish in water. It's so easy." Nian Mao kept switching between Nian Mao and Nian Mao, making her subconsciously think that she could only choose one of the two names. Naturally, she chose Nian Mao, which she was most used to. "Wahaha! I'm indeed brilliant, talented, and full of wisdom. Who can compare with me when I have such extraordinary wisdom? Who else? When it comes to wooing Nian Mao, I, Duo, call myself the best in the world." Who doesn't agree? Even if they don't agree, they're not allowed to compete. Those who compete will be beaten to death. It's better to be wrong than wrong. "Why did you call me?" Xiaonian finished washing the dishes and wiped her hands. Only then did she realize that this guy was holding her waist in a daze. It was obvious that he still had something to say. "Tonight, I might have to use the 9th Heaven Spirit Spring," Duo said. "I just don't know how much my cultivation realm will drop after using it." "It doesn't matter," Xiaonian said. "No matter how much it drops, it's a good thing. The spiritual energy will be more refined and pure. It'll only be good for the future." "I'm all right." When I came out for dinner, I received a notice that the 9 Heavens Pavilion needs to send 30 cloud transformation cultivators to enter the secret realm. "I'm on the list." Xiaonian said. "What about you?" I'm the leader of the 400 soul transformation cultivators in the secret realm," Duo said proudly. Chapter 765. You're only at the primordial elixir level now, okay? How can you be a nascent soul captain? Xiaonian mocked him. "I'm going to be a nascent soul captain soon. Why can't I be one?" "Nian Nian Cat, when you were at the embryonic breathing stage, I was nothing. When you were at the soul awakening stage, I was at the Xiantian level. When you were at the nascent soul stage, I was at the embryonic breathing stage. Now you're at the pinnacle of the cloud transformation stage, and I'm at the pinnacle of the primordial elixir realm. I can break through to the nascent soul stage at any time." Duo was very satisfied and said, "I feel that I'm getting closer and closer to you. I believe that soon, you'll be singing Conquer in front of me and doing the cat ear dance for me." Why don't I find a video for you to watch first? You don't have to cram for it at the last minute. Zhou Xiaoyan's forehead was filled with black lines. Earlier, when she heard him talk about the past, she was still gratified by his progress. In the end, he suddenly took a turn and almost hurt her. It turned out that it was all a trick. He had been scheming against her step by step. This was simply intolerable. Even if the uncle could tolerate it, the aunt could not tolerate it. Get lost. Zhou Xiaoduo didn't get lost. Instead, he carried Zhou Xiaoyan to the sofa. Then, he took out his phone and started to look for videos. Look at this young lady. She's dancing well. Look at her cat ears. Look at her butt. Look. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he looked up, he saw Zhou Xiaoyan's frosty face. Hey, dog. Are these all your followers? Zhou Xiaoyan grabbed the phone and opened My Followers. She saw that there were at least 100 female streamers. They were all good at dancing and were more flirtatious. She clicked on a few to take a look. Her face was pale and cold, and a chill was coming out of her. Zhou Xiaoduo knew that something was wrong. For a moment, he didn't even dare to hug her waist. He curled up at the side and explained dryly in a low voice, I'm also for the sake of. In the future, we'll have more fun as husband and wife, so that we can make plans early. For you. Zhou Xiaoyan almost crushed her phone. These steel pipes. Electric buttocks. Why you? You're really obscene. Before he could finish his sentence, he tossed his phone onto the sofa. Zhou Xiaoyan stood up with a cold face and stomped back to his room. He was angry. Oh no. Zhou Xiaoduo looked dejected and disheartened. Zhou Xiaoyan went back to her room and sat down angrily for a while. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Puppy. You disappoint me too much. This was simply despicable. After pondering for a long time, he finally took out his phone, opened up a video streaming website, searched for a few videos based on his memory, and began watching them. But the more she read, the redder her face became. She hurriedly followed a few of them and decided to criticize them when she had time in the future. She didn't have the time for that now. He hurriedly put away his phone and put it into his spatial ring. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was still as red as a ripe apple. She didn't go out for now and looked at herself in the mirror. She said angrily, those women. There's no need to talk about their color. They can't compare to me. Even their figures are far inferior to mine. When I have time, I'll play with them casually. I'll definitely charm this puppy, who asked him to wander around and look around. He really deserves a beating. If Wu Yuding were to hear this argument, she would definitely sigh and lament, Girl, what kind of mentality is this? You're not thinking in the right way. If you do this, won't that little puppy be the only one to benefit? Sigh, girl, you're really hopeless. After a full hour, Zhou Xiaoyan came out of her room with a cold face. Zhou Xiaoduo looked at her with a pitiful face, waiting for the punishment to come. Practice martial arts. Zhou Xiaoyan's face was cold. Okay. So Xiaoduo hurriedly opened the Tower of Annihilation and humbly said, Nian, cat, let's go in. His flattering face, coupled with his handsome face, was extremely out of place. The magic of creation was evident. Zhou Xiaoyan snorted coldly and took the lead to enter with her head held high. Zhou Xiaoduo was relieved. It seemed that her temper had passed. She didn't get angry when I called Nian just now. She escaped a disaster. One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. Wait for me. Zhou Xiaoduo called out from behind and eagerly followed her in. Prince Zhongyuan's mansion. Prince Zhongyuan was wearing a royal robe and feeding the fish in the back garden. At this moment, Prince Zhongyuan's mansion looked cold and cheerless, without any signs of life. The princess consort had already been executed, and all the guards in the family had been captured. All the leaders of the secret organizations had already gone to hell to report. Most of the female martial artists who were secretly searching for concubines had been beheaded. The rest had been forcibly dismissed. In short, no one was left in the mansion. In the entire Prince Zhongyuan's mansion, other than a few maids and a few guards, only the butler and servants were left. The prince's mansion of the Central Plains, which had once flourished for a period of time, was now left with only a few people. Dressed in a bright yellow robe, Prince Jungin stood by the pond with one hand behind his back. The three-clawed golden dragon on his body reflected in the water, swaying back and forth as if it was about to devour someone. The butler served him from a distance with his back hunched. Looking at Prince Zhongyuan's figure, he felt bleak, no longer as composed as before. The butler didn't know whether it was an illusion or reality. "Your Highness," the butler said softly, "where is the heir now?" Prince Zhongyuan threw out a handful of pearls and asked calmly. "He's still on his way back from Shanjing." The butler said, "Your Highness, do you want me to pick him up?" There was a sad look in the butler's eyes. He knew about all the Prince Zhongyuan's heirs, including his illegitimate children. But what the butler also knew was that, except for the heir who was officially registered as an emperor, the other bloodlines were all gone. There were all sorts of ways to die, and there were all sorts of strange ways to die. They drowned, burned, fell, got caught in the wind, drank too much, got scalded by hot pot. Their cell phones exploded, and the building they lived in suddenly collapsed. In short, there were only ways to die that one couldn't think of. The wide range of deaths was breathtaking and marvelous. The 100 to 200 descendants of His Highness had all gathered together in the underworld. Hundreds of the prince's women were also meeting in the underworld. Other than that, the prince's 10,000 old subordinates, 3,000 secret assassins, 8 gangs, and 12 aristocratic families, and all kinds of forces and layers of foundation were waiting in the underworld now. The prince only had 2 secret masters left in his hands that he didn't know about. These 2 people were probably the only ones who hadn't been caught. "There's no need to pick them up," Prince Zhongyuan said lightly. "Those who deserve to die will die. Those who don't deserve to die will definitely live." He waved his hand. "Old Ma, come here. There's only the 2 of us in this mansion." "Yes, Your Highness." The butler walked over obediently and stood next to Prince Zhongyuan with his back hunched. At this moment, the fish in the pond suddenly started rolling violently. A fish was spitting out blue bubbles with all its might. In the entire pool, all the fish that came into contact with these blue bubbles began to roll around crazily. Then they also began to spit out bubbles continuously. The same blue bubbles in the blink of an eye. Hundreds of big fish in the entire pond started rolling. Regardless of species, big or small, all of them were spitting bubbles. As the water with bubbles flowed past, the other fish ponds connected to it also started rolling and spitting bubbles. It was like a chain reaction. Usually, a prince's mansion had several gardens. But when one reached a certain status, there would be a layout of 5 lakes and 4 seas. In other words, there were 9 fish ponds, which symbolized the imperial family's wealth. And the Prince Zhongyuan's family had such a layout. But now all the fish in the 9 ponds were rolling and spitting out blue bubbles. Some of the fish with weaker vitality had already started to show their white bellies. "Your Highness, this is..." The butler, Old Ma, looked at the fish pond in front of him in shock. What are you doing?" Looking at the big fish rolling in the pond with his hands behind his back, the Prince Zhongyuan sighed softly. He said dispassionately, "Old Ma, how many years have you been with me?" Old Ma was confused. He said, "Since I entered the mansion, I've been serving you, Your Highness. Until this year, it's been a total of 121 years. It's been more than 120 years, more than 60 years. Old Ma, you're a participant in all my plans and also the executor of all my deployments. Old Ma, you're my most trusted aide." The Prince Zhongyuan sighed softly. "Old Ma, look at the fish in the pond. They're divided into 9 places and seem to be connected, but their range of movement is still limited to the Prince Zhongyuan's mansion. Everyone is connected, breathing the same air, drinking the same water. They're of the same origin." "Yes." Old Ma was puzzled. What did this mean? The wind and rain outside never affected them. To them, the perilous situation outside was nothing more than a legend. They were originally safe. The Prince Zhongyuan said slowly, "This was originally very good. This was originally excellent. But look at the situation now. Originally, only 1 fish was poisoned, but as this fish began to spit out bubbles crazily, the poison spread. Because this 1 fish was poisoned, It implicated all the fish in the 9 ponds. All of them suffered misfortune, and none of them were spared. The Prince Zhong Yuan stood with his hands behind his back. His gaze was cold and calm as he looked at the fish in the pond. This is my mansion, but I can only watch them die one by one. There's nothing I can do. But at the end of the day, the root of the disaster is because of this one fish. Old Ma, don't you think so? The Prince Zhong Yuan turned around slowly and looked at the butler. Old Ma. Old Ma looked perplexed. He said, "If your Highness says so, then it must be so." So, regardless of whether it's a group, the most terrifying thing is not the raging storms outside. It's the internal ones. The disaster caused by one poisonous fish is enough to bring disaster to the entire pond. The Prince Zhong Yuan smiled faintly. His gaze gradually became as sharp as a blade as he stared at Old Ma's face. Requesting monthly votes. Please provide support. Chapter 766. Old Ma was dumbfounded. Your Highness, you mean? The King of Zhong Yuan slowly said. Old Ma, do you know that the Prince of Zhong Yuan's residence has been deployed for so many years, spent so much effort in planning, and paid a huge amount of wealth that even an ordinary aristocratic family would not dare to imagine everyone was so careful, from beginning to end to contact each other. Finally, when the net was about to be formed, they were all caught in one fell swoop. For the person in charge, how hard is it to accept? The King of Zhong Yuan took a deep breath. Don't you think our residence is like this pool of fish? The housekeeper's gaze also turned sharp. Your Highness, you mean there's a traitor among us? The King of Zhong Yuan nodded lightly, a hint of mockery in his eyes. Yes, a traitor who has an overview of the overall situation and understands everything. The King of Zhong Yuan's sharp eyes fixed on the housekeeper Old Ma's face, like two red-hot needles, pricking his face. Staring at him like this, he slowly said, Years of planning to defeat the West Wind. The Golden Carp is still unable to become a dragon. Conceded that he has the world's plan, his subordinates are all heroes. In dreams, in the field, above the clouds, under the clouds, suffering, weaving a net of the world, hiding 3 suns in the depths of the palace, waving his sleeves to raise the military and political will, planning to bring the Zhong Yuan into his pocket. Everything is ready, waiting for the right time, but all is in vain. What is the end of this life? Who in the world can answer his doubts? The housekeeper Old Ma suddenly looked excited, exclaiming in admiration, Your Highness, good poem. Your Highness, good poem. The King of Zhong Yuan closed his eyes slightly, gently exhaling. I'm asking you a question. Why did you give me a good poem? Things had already come to this point. Could it be that they still couldn't be honest with each other? This traitor is that poisonous fish. This traitor is constantly spitting out bubbles, implicating all those who have come into contact with him. They are all implicated in the calamity of death, and it is difficult for them to escape. A slight smile appeared on the King of Zhong Yuan's dignified face, but the smile lines on his face were cold and callous. The housekeeper's face was full of anger, gnashing his teeth. Your Highness, who is that person? Who is so crazy? Do you know? I know. Of course I know. If I still didn't know until now, wouldn't I be extremely foolish? The King of Zhong Yuan looked at the butler's face. His eyes became increasingly cold, but there was also a hint of sadness and emptiness in them. The steward said with righteous indignation, Please give the order, Your Highness. Even if I have to risk my life, I will not let this person go. This person has committed a heinous crime and deserves to be killed. The King of Zhong Yuan said quietly, Old Ma, do you really think so? Yes. This subordinate is so angry that his belly is about to explode. The King of Zhong Yuan chuckled. Then why don't I tell you? That person is you. Yes. The butler stood rooted to the ground, his mouth agape as he stared blankly at the Prince of Zhong Yuan. The King of Zhong Yuan was very close to the butler. He looked at the butler with an oppressive gaze. Gritting his teeth, he smiled and said in a low voice, Yes, it's you, Your Highness. The butler took a step back in panic and almost fell into the pool. Your Highness, I'm innocent. I'll be loyal to you for life. A self-mocking expression appeared on the king of Zhongyuan's face. Her, loyal to you for life. Her, huh? He suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed so hard that he rocked back and forth and tears came out of his eyes. Tears of laughter flowed down his cheeks, but he was still laughing. Ha 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 ha. I'm dying of laughter. Ha ha ha. This is too funny. This is too funny. The king of Zhong laughed maniacally, not caring about his manners at all. Old Ma, since you're so loyal to me, please tell me honestly. Can I still see my son? Can I still see the crown prince and his family? See them for the last time? The king of Zhongyuan bit his lip so hard that it bled. The butler panicked. Your Highness, what's wrong? I just received news that the crown prince's carriage is about to enter Fenghai. You'll be able to see them soon. I'll be able to see them soon. Ha ha, I've already seen them. The king of Zhongyuan laughed bitterly. His entire body was trembling. He took out his phone from his bosom. There were dozens of pictures in it. The butler's gaze was fixed on the name of the caller. Inyan guessed. Take a good look, my loyal butler. The king of Zhongyuan did not care about what the butler was looking at. Now, he no longer cared about anything. He was still laughing maniacally. Take a look. Take a look. I've seen it. You take a look too. The butler trembled incessantly. Your Highness, your Highness. I'll show you. Yes. The butler picked up the phone and flipped through the pictures one by one. The pictures were all of corpses. There were men, women, and young children. There were even a few pictures of families who had died neatly together. The king of Zhongyuan looked at the weeping willow in the mansion. Its bare branches were swaying in the breeze. Occasionally, there would be a soft sound, and a branch would break off and fall. It would fall into the dust. The crown prince and his family were found dead on the road at Xiaomong Mountain Pass this afternoon. Everyone, including the accompanying guards, men, women, old, and young, were all killed, including my grandsons and granddaughters. The king of Zhongyuan took a deep breath. The crown prince kept a few mistresses in Shanjing. Around the same time, their entire families, including the young children, all died an unnatural death. Now, at this very moment, do you know how many people are left in the king of Zhongyuan's bloodline? The king of Zhongyuan smiled faintly. I'm the only one left. I'm the only one left. I'm the only one who hasn't died yet. Everyone who is related to me, my bloodline, The king of Zhongyuan clenched his teeth. With a cracking sound, he actually crushed one of his teeth. Family, my bloodline. None of them are alive in this world anymore. The king of Zhongyuan looked at the butler's pale face and trembling body. He slowly approached him, his gaze dark and oppressive. Is this what you meant when you said that I'm about to be reunited with my son? The butler explained in a panic. Your Highness, even if the crown prince met with an accident, it has nothing to do with me. What a great nothing to do with you. At that time, you were the one who suggested that I bring the crown prince back from Shanjing, because I'm afraid that something bad will happen if he stays there. After all, with the matter of the Chung family's daughter, there's already a blood feud with the crown prince. It's better to let the crown prince and his family return to Fenghai. It's still our territory, and it's more secure. So I listened to you and let them come back. The king of Zhongyuan's eyes were bloodshot. He said, do you know? At that time, I knew it was you. But I mistakenly thought that it was the higher-up's intention to let our family gather in one place. As long as we don't stir up trouble, I'll keep my bloodline. But I never thought that you would be so vicious. The king of Zhongyuan's eyes looked like they were dripping blood, but the corners of his mouth were really dripping blood. He suddenly laughed loudly. Funny. It's really fucking funny. I thought that I had everything under control, that I was invulnerable, but I didn't expect that the biggest traitor was actually my mastermind. He was the one who understood everything about me, arranged everything for me, and knew all the secrets of my bloodline, the first mastermind. How ridiculous. Jun Taifeng, if you don't lose, then the heavens are blind. The king of Zhongyuan raised his hand and slapped himself 4 times. He slapped himself so hard that his face swelled up instantly, and blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. But he didn't stop. He wasn't satisfied. After thinking for a while, he slapped himself a dozen more times. You're stupid. You're so stupid. So stupid. The mastermind is a traitor. Jun Taifeng, how fucking blind are your eyes? The king of Zhongyuan gasped for breath. After a long time, he finally let out an earth-shattering roar. Who are you? Old Ma. Who the fuck are you? The butler, Old Ma, stared at the king of Zhongyuan. His eyes were originally trembling, respectful, sorrowful, understanding, and empathetic. But slowly, the look in his eyes suddenly changed. No longer trembling, no longer panicking. His originally stooped waist actually slowly straightened. His pale face was still pale, but the usual humble and submissive look on his face had completely disappeared. He straightened his body and stood in front of the king of Zhongyuan, presenting an indescribable sense of dignity. Then, he actually smiled faintly at the king of Zhongyuan. He said clearly, "Hello." The king of Zhongyuan glared at him fiercely, gritting his teeth and praising. Not bad, not bad. This is your true face. You're really outstanding. The butler smiled and coughed. He slowly took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, carefully opened the packaging, and put one in his mouth. Then, he took out a lighter and lit it calmly. He took a deep breath and said emotionally, "I've quit smoking for more than 100 years. Now that I suddenly smoke, I'm a little dizzy and not used to it. This is the last time." The king of Zhongyuan's eyes were bloodshot. "Very soon, you won't faint anymore." That's right. Once a person is dead, how can he still faint? The butler puffed on his cigarette. The smoke curled up and almost covered his face. Who are you? The king of Zhongyuan held back his temper that was about to explode and asked through gritted teeth. You're from the royal family? The crown prince? Or the nine heavens pavilion? Or the left and right heavenly kings? Or the minister and the emperor? When he mentioned the last two people, the king of Zhongyuan's voice also trembled. He. The butler, Old Ma, laughed mockingly. He bit the cigarette, and took a puff. You really think highly of yourself. Do you think you're worthy of the minister and the emperor to specially deploy people to deal with you? The butler laughed mockingly. Suddenly, he coughed violently, tilted his head, and spat with a disgusted expression. Tui. He actually pointed at the king of Zhongyuan with the hand holding the cigarette and scolded with infinite disdain. Can you have some self-awareness? Who the hell do you think you are? Do you think you're worthy of so many big shots scheming against you? Can you be more shameless? You've already lost your family, and you're still acting like an idiot? Where does your confidence come from? Chapter 767. You're scolding me. The king of Zhongyuan was suddenly stunned for a long while. The butler suddenly spoke to him in such a tone, and he was actually at a loss for what to do. Even though he knew that the butler was a traitor and a mole, he was already used to the butler's subservience and groveling after so many years. Now, he looked at this person whom he had been with for more than 100 years, whom he was more familiar with than his wife, whom he trusted 100 times more than his wife, that he was stunned on the spot when the butler said such vicious and mocking words to him, and he did not come back to his senses for a long time. Then, who exactly do you work for? The king of Zhongyuan's mind raced, but he was not angry. He was only left with curiosity now. Who was the one who schemed against him and planned for 100 years? For so many years, the butler had been loyal and devoted to him. He had completed all the tasks given to him perfectly. That was something he had seen with his own eyes. But until now, the king of the Central Plains still could not figure out why he would betray him. I'm a bastard, the butler sneered. As he spoke, he suddenly slapped himself. This slap was extremely heavy, directly knocking out 3 of his own teeth. When he looked up again, his mouth was already dripping with blood. He looked at the king of Zhongyuan's face and suddenly sneered. You want to know? You really want to know? Please enlighten me. I'm not anyone's man, and no one instigated me. The butler slurped and swallowed the blood and teeth back into his mouth. I'm about to leave, so it's better to be in one piece. Take them with you. Not anyone's man. The king of Zhongyuan was even more confused. How is that possible? Do you have a grudge against me? I have no grudge against you. The king of Zhongyuan was completely dumbfounded. No one instigated you, and you have no grudge against me? Are you crazy? Why are you doing this to me? If I have to say it, I'm your man, the butler said with certainty. My man. The king of Zhongyuan felt insulted. He glared and was about to fly into a rage. I'm indeed your man, and I've always been your man. The butler took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, Back then, when I was fighting at the front lines, the flood which struck me with her hammer and knocked me unconscious. My primordial spirit was injured and my origin was damaged. I fell to the ground and fell on the spike club with a bad face. Not to mention my face, even my facial bones were gone. I retired from the army with Yi Chongqing and the others. But we are not the same kind of people. My way of doing things has always been based on achieving my goal. I don't care about the process, so naturally, I'm much more sinister and vicious. However, the few of them boast of being open and above board, and refuse to use underhanded tricks. Therefore, we really don't have much interaction usually. They went to the Hidden Dragon High School, but I don't want to teach and I don't want to wander the Jianghu. But I don't want to live an indifferent life and become an ordinary person. I still want to do something in another place and in another place. I've never been the kind of person with a strong sense of justice. At the same time, I don't want to be buried. I'm already used to stirring up trouble and controlling the overall situation. Even my brothers in the army fought each other because of my instigation. Some of them fought until they became lifelong enemies. In their eyes, I'm a poisonous snake. Not only are they difficult to be friends with, they're even unbearable to be associated with. You definitely don't know that Yi Chongqing and the others were also once instigated by me. They almost killed me because of this. But no matter how unbearable it is to be associated with them, when we're on the battlefield, we'll still leave our backs to each other and save each other's lives no less than a dozen times. I don't want to meet them, and I don't want to face that battlefield again. My left and right faces are already ruined, so I might as well reconstruct a new face. I'll use a new face and a new name to start a new life. Stirring up wind and rain is already the greatest pleasure of my life. Old Ma chuckled and said, You're an ambitious person. Following you will not only not bring disgrace to me, but will also allow me to unleash my talents. I've really put in the greatest effort to follow you in the rebellion. I also really want to meet the wind and clouds once. Even if I die, I'll have no regrets. I don't care about right or wrong. I don't care about justice or evil. I only want to live a happy life. I only want to live a happy life for the rest of my life. Old Ma said, When I entered the Prince of Zhongyuan's residence, I did everything you asked me to do properly. I became your confidant bit by bit, and even participated in some important matters later on. I've been loyal to you for decades. It's all because I've done my best for you. I've treated myself as your dog. It's because this feeling of stirring up trouble in the dark is too satisfying. So, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll bite whoever you want me to bite. The Prince of Zhongyuan nodded. Old Ma's words were not wrong at all. During those years, Old Ma's loyalty to him was to the extreme. It was really to the point that it made one's hair stand on end. The Prince of Zhongyuan didn't know how many shady things he had done for him. In fact, it was also at that time that the Prince of Zhongyuan found out that this guy was a jack of all trades. He could do anything and dare to do anything. In the end, he completed everything extremely well. How could such a talent not be entrusted with heavy responsibilities and treated as a confidant? After more than 100 years of interaction, the two of them could be said to have an excellent tacit understanding. Just from the perspective of companionship and trust, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were best friends in the world. That was why the Prince of Zhongyuan found out so late that the mole was actually Old Ma. The Prince of Zhongyuan even thought that even if his wife betrayed him, Old Ma wouldn't betray him. Even if he changed his mind and betrayed his own people, Old Ma wouldn't betray him. But now it just had to be this absolutely impossible person. I used to think that I'd never betray you in my life, until I suddenly found out that you've actually laid your hands on a martial artist. A martial artist? The Prince of Zhongyuan was stunned. That's right. Old Ma's face was blood red. It doesn't matter who you've laid your hands on. Even if you've laid your hands on the minister and the emperor, even if I know that I'm no match for them, I'll still help you plan. At most, I'll die with you. It doesn't matter. But why did you lay your hands on Shi Yunfeng? Why did you lay your hands on Yi Changqing? You instigated people to plot against Yi Changqing first. But as long as he's not dead, I won't do anything even if I feel uncomfortable for a while. You instigated people to frame Xiang Quangren. That's still fine. As long as he's not dead, you can hide at home for a while. I'll even be happy to see that happen. After that, you set up a trap and pulled in the major families of the capital. For your hegemony, you made Yi Changqing and the others sacrifice their status. I could still accept it. As long as he's not dead, everything else is insignificant. However, I never expected that you would lay your hands on Shi Yunfeng and Cheng Gang so viciously and ruthlessly. Fine, since you've done it once, I'll do it 15 times. What I'm more concerned about is when did you fall in love with Yu Jiaren? Old Ma asked fiercely. Until now, there's still a portrait of Yu Jiaren hanging in your study. Do you still remember the day of Shi Yunfeng's wedding after he returned to the Hidden Dragon Kingdom and found a wife? I didn't do anything. I just hid in my room and drank myself to death. Surely you have some impression of that, right? Ever since I came to the Prince of Zhongyuan's residence, I've only gotten drunk once in all these years. Old Ma asked fiercely. The Prince of Zhongyuan was in a trance. He vaguely remembered that there was a time when he asked the butler to do something, only to be told that the butler was so drunk that he didn't even know who he was. He kept shouting that he was a marshal and wanted to lead the troops in a battle at that time. The Prince of Zhongyuan found it funny that this viper-like guy had such a naive side. He didn't expect it to be because of this. His brother got married and he got drunk happily. There's nothing wrong with you liking Yu Jiaren. But why didn't you pursue her before she got married? Old Ma asked fiercely. Even if you wanted to snatch her before she got married, as long as you said so, even if you wanted me to snatch her for you personally, it would be fine. What's the big deal about snatching and playing with a woman? You could have said so earlier. Why didn't you? You played with so many women. Why did you start to pretend to be pure when it came to Yu Jiaren? Fuck you. Do you think you're a Casanova? You're a fucking stallion. Even stallions don't have as many mares as you do. The Prince of Zhongyuan snorted and said angrily, Yu Jiaren usually dressed like a country bumpkin. How could I have noticed it? The only time I saw her real face was on the day of her wedding with Shi Yunfeng. I was there as a guest. And then you fell in love at first sight? Aren't you fucking cheap? Old Ma was obviously going all out this time. He knew that he wouldn't be able to survive today, no matter what. It was better for him to curse out everything in his heart before he died, venting everything in his heart. Anyway, the Prince of Zhongyuan didn't know everything yet. He had plenty of time to curse and curse as viciously as he could. That was what it meant to be satisfied and to the fullest. So all these were done by you and Yi Changqing from the Hidden Dragon High School. The Prince of Zhongyuan was trembling all over. Just the two of you? How awesome do you think you are? Just the two of us? Old Ma snorted and said proudly, There's no we. Only me. Only me. Do you understand? They don't know it all. Old Ma spat. Those few idiots, they're so simple-minded and don't even have a brain. If I were to work with them, I'm afraid I would have been caught by you long ago. He roared proudly. I did it all by myself. Why? Isn't your father awesome? The Prince of Zhongyuan started to tremble all over. He really wanted to slap this person to death, but there were too many doubts in his heart. The arrangement of the Hidden Dragon High School was already part of my plan. Besides, I didn't ask you to do those things. Do you have to do this? The Prince of Zhongyuan said angrily. Of course. You harmed my brother. Of course I have to take revenge. Chapter 768. Hee. By the time I found out about Shi Yunfeng, you'd already done it. Shi Yunfeng had already secretly gone to the front line. Since then, you wanted to lay your hands on Beauty Yu, but you never succeeded. Do you know why? The king of Zhongyuan snorted coldly. With my butler helping over there, I naturally couldn't succeed. You're the only one who can understand all of my arrangements. You're the only one who can use most of my power. You're also the only one who can erase all traces after the event without me noticing. Ha ha ha. Beauty Yu is already my brother's wife. What do you think you are? It's one thing for me to be your dog, but in my heart, you, Jun Typhoon, have never been a human. I can be your dog, but you can't lay your hands on my brother's wife. My brother is dead, and I can't save him. I've already let him down. If I let you defile his wife, then what's the use of me? Old Ma twisted his neck. Originally, Shi Yinfeng wanted to die. After I protected Beauty Yu, I wanted to leave. Because if I continued to work for you, I'd let Shi Yinfeng down. But you killed Cheng Gaing's 2 granddaughters, and you even used such a despicable method. The blood on old Ma's face was flashing as he gritted his teeth. For the past 100 years, no matter what bad things you do, you're used to discussing it with me first. Why didn't you discuss it with me only that time? Is it because it's related to the royal family's secret, and you don't want me to know? The king of Zhongyuan was in a daze. At that time, he didn't deliberately hide it from old Ma. It was because old Ma was sent out to do something. He forgot. Besides, targeting those 2 girls was indeed related to the royal family's secret. It was a rare opportunity, and it was fleeting, so he arranged it conveniently. Just these few people. You'll never contact these few people in your life. Are they worth betraying me? The king of Zhongyuan was confused. I don't have a father, a mother, a wife, or children. I don't even have brothers or sisters. Old Ma howled to the sky. The 17 of them who survived that year are the only warmth in my heart. The only warmth in my heart. You know, son of a bitch. Do you know why I chose the king's mansion of Zhongyuan? It's because the hidden dragon is in Fenghai. And your king's mansion of Zhongyuan is also in Fenghai. Because they are all here. With them here, as long as they're still alive, I won't be lonely. In this life, I don't even care about my own life. I don't know how many evil and heartless things I've done. But what's funny is, I care about these brothers who crawled out from the pile of corpses with me. I don't want to see them, not because I look down on them, and not because I feel inferior. I don't feel inferior when I do bad things because I like to do bad things. I don't feel inferior or proud. It's just that they are annoying. Fuck, this is so annoying. Old Ma grabbed his hair and said crazily, the moment we met, they talked about all sorts of things and persuaded me to do things with them, to turn over a new leaf. Fuck, if I really want to do it, would I need their advice? Is it so fun to go to a martial arts school and teach a bunch of idiots who don't know shit every day? Looking at those ignorant and naive idiots who always think that society is fair, I want to strangle them to death one by one. You still want to teach? Teach. I'd rather change my face and identity to be a dog than do that kind of thing. There was a time when I read the Hidden Dragon Daily and the Hidden Dragonheim Martial Arts School website every day. What do you think I was doing? You must have thought that I was deliberately looking for the flaws of the people from the Hidden Dragonheim Martial Arts School. In fact, I missed them and looked at those messages to comfort myself. Old Ma seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. The king of Zhongyuan suddenly understood. I see, I really thought that you knew that I wanted to deal with the Hidden Dragonheim Martial Arts School, and thought of ways for me every day. When Yi Changqing got into trouble, I tolerated it. When Xiang Quangren got into trouble, I also tolerated it. After all, they were still alive. But when Shi Yinfeng died, I couldn't tolerate it anymore. But since you and I have known each other for 100 years, although I was determined to deal with you, I would only target you and not your family. But not long after, Cheng Gaing's incident happened. I made up my mind. How can I leave before I completely destroy you? They can't take revenge, but I can. Old Ma laughed miserably. At that time, I swore that I would make your Zhongyuan imperial residents extinct. Kill them all. Exterminate them all. I will make your Zhongyuan imperial residents, and not a single blade of grass in your imperial residence survive. I will let you have a good taste of your family being exterminated and your family being exterminated. I will avenge my brother. Old Ma roared to the sky, tears of blood flowing down his face. He laughed loudly. Shi Yinfeng, brother, do you see that? You fucking beat me every day in the army, but now I am avenging you. Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? Are you fucking satisfied? Fucking Shi Yinfeng, fucking Shi Yinfeng. I saved your life 7 times, but you still scolded me every day like a son of a bitch. You fucking died, and I am the one who avenged you. Are you satisfied? Those who hurt you have been uprooted by me. Ha ha! Their entire family, old and young, will be exterminated. Old Ma roared with laughter, looking extremely crazy. Ha ha! I'm not with you every day, but I have not forgotten. I'm a bastard. I do not do good things. I follow good people to do good things, and bad people to do bad things. But I do not want to follow good people. There are too many restrictions. I can't do anything in the army, but I want to live happily at home, whether it's doing bad things or avenging you. I want to do it happily. It is the best. Old Ma roared with laughter, as if he had completely lost his mind. The king of Zhongyan, on the other hand, had completely calmed down. I see, so this is the truth. Back then, when Cheng Gang broke into the imperial residence, I personally went to greet him, but he still managed to escape. You must have done something, right? The king of Zhongyuan finally understood. Many of his doubts in the past had been answered. At that time, he had decided to attack, intending to kill Cheng Gang directly. However, Cheng Gang had still managed to escape after taking a fatal blow from him. It was extremely strange. That was his imperial residence, his own territory. A seriously injured outsider who was not familiar with the terrain at all, who was facing so many experts, had actually managed to escape. And he could not even be caught after escaping. It turned out that he had a steward as a spy. Old Ma sneered. I have been your steward for more than 100 years. It was very easy for me to lead him out without anyone knowing. How could I watch my brother die here? After that, you even wanted to investigate the spy. Ha ha! With your little brain, how could you find out? I see. I see. At this moment, the king of Zhongyan only felt a sense of absurdity filling his entire head. There was no more hatred or anger, or rather, no more hatred or anger. It was not as great as this absurd feeling. I have worked so hard for half my life, all my efforts, all my planning, all because of this bullshit brotherhood, and I have fallen just like that. Who can I find a reason with? I really did not expect this even in my dreams. Over the past 100 years, he had worked together with the man before him to get rid of the spies planted by the royal family, the Bureau of Supervision, and the military. They had gotten rid of all of the spies planted by the royal family, the Bureau of Supervision, and the military. If it were not for the fact that most of it was done by the steward, how could I have trusted him so much and entrusted most of my power to him? But who would have thought that the most loyal dog in my heart, who never doubted me, was actually the biggest traitor? And the reason he betrayed me was because of this so-called brotherhood and brotherhood that I would not believe in at all. If Old Ma had not revealed it himself today, if others had used this as a basis to expose me, I would have scoffed and not believed them. I would even send the people who exposed Old Ma to Old Ma directly and tell him a joke. These people said that you betrayed me for your brotherhood. Huh? This is fucking unbelievable. How could there be such brotherhood in this world? How could there be such feelings? This is fucking ridiculous. But why are you still here? You have already caused me to lose my descendants, my bloodline to be extinct, and my career to be ruined. Why are you still here? Asked the king of Zhongyuan. This was the biggest doubt in his heart. Before today, even though he had his doubts, the steward had countless opportunities to leave if he wanted to. But he did not leave and stayed here all this time. Until now, when he could no longer bear it and dragged him out. Leave? Old Ma smiled viciously. You're not dead yet. How can I leave? I will not leave before I have my revenge. It will only be over when you die after your whole family is dead. June Typhoon, why can't you bear with it? If you bear with it for a few more days, I will make my move on you. You still have 2 confidants that I have not found and killed. Why can't you wait? The king of Zhongyuan sighed softly. So you are still waiting for me to die. You actually want me to bear with it for a while more. Opposite him, Old Ma chuckled, his face full of joy. I serve in the East Army, and then, when Shi Yunfeng finally exposed himself, I felt that this was an opportunity, an excellent opportunity, so I reported all your actions. To General Dongfang. From the beginning to the end, I did not miss any detail, haha. All this information is with me. Even you do not know as much as I do. Old Ma laughed heartily. That is why Chief Nan is purging this time. Now, do you understand? You did it for this? To betray me? Just for this so-called brotherhood? The king of Zhongyuan was trembling all over. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that his life's work would be ruined because of this. Even until now, he was still unwilling to believe this person. Brotherly love. Brotherly love. What the hell is that? This bastard did so much for this. Is this not enough? Old Ma laughed sinisterly. What you did to my brother, I will make you become like him. I will repay you tenfold. That year, I went out on a mission with Shi Yunfeng and the rest. When I came back, my butt was hit with the secret sorcery king needle, and the wound smelled like the sewer of a chemical factory. The 6 of them carried me on their backs and sucked my butt with their mouths. I'm alive now, but they've all been bedridden for half a year. Every part of their bodies is as swollen as dough. When Shi Yunfeng sucked my blood for the last time, his face was already bigger than my butt. When Xing Tian's mouth was injured and one of his teeth was knocked out, in order to suck my butt, half of his face was scraped off after he came back, and 2 layers of his bones were scraped off before he survived. We went through fire and water together. They saved my life, and I saved their lives too. No one owes anyone anything. However, for the brothers who sucked my butt like this, whoever killed them, I will avenge them no matter what. I don't have to acknowledge anyone in this lifetime. Only they can't. I don't have to avenge anyone in this lifetime, but they can't. I don't have to care about anyone in this lifetime, even myself, but they can't. You fucking. For a moment, the king of Zhongyuan was even speechless. Suddenly, he was so exasperated that he started cursing. You fucking. You're just a fucking rotten maggot with ulcers on your head and pus flowing out of your feet. Why the fuck are you talking about brotherhood in the martial world? You bastard, do you think you're fit to talk about loyalty? Are you worthy? The king of Zhongyuan was speechless. He suppressed all his emotions. These words were also from the bottom of his heart. He really thought so. How can someone like you be fit to talk about brotherhood? Was he worthy of having feelings? This was like a prostitute who had been a prostitute for half her life coming home to find her husband, only to ask him to have money, a building, betrothal gifts, and a car. She even asked him to be a virgin. This was really fucking motherfucking. Why am I not worthy? Why wasn't he worthy? It's not up to you to decide if I'm worthy or not. Old Ma lit a cigarette and looked up. I've been blinded by lard. I've been bad all my life, but I still have brothers and people I can't let go of. Even I find it strange. But I've already talked about brotherhood. What can you do about it? The king of Zhongyuan looked at this face. He had never realized that this face was actually so annoying. Old Ma's face was contorted with a cigarette in his mouth. He revealed a vicious smile and said, Actually, you should be happy, because you still have a few daughters. Nominally, they're dead, but in reality, they're not dead yet. The king of the Zhongyuan's thoughts turned, and his face became even more contorted. What do you mean? It's nothing. They're in some place now, doing something that makes a man the happiest. The freckles on old Ma's face were almost protruding out. He smiled sinisterly and said, Actually, you shouldn't be surprised. This is the interest I collected for Chung Gaiying's 2 granddaughters. I don't have any children or family. My brother's granddaughters are my granddaughters. This is the interest I collected for my granddaughters. Are you satisfied, Your Highness? That it's the 3rd watch today. Please vote. Chapter 769. Boom. Bastard. The king of Zhongyuan finally made his move. He was completely enraged. Completely enraged. A thunderous punch landed on Old Ma's face. Old Ma didn't resist at all. He knew that his martial arts were far inferior to the king of Zhongyuan's. Since he had been discovered, since he was face to face, there was no point in resisting. His thin body was sent flying by the king of Zhongyuan's punch. He fell like a broken sack, bleeding from his 7 orifices. However, Old Ma was laughing happily. How is it? Is it fun? Ha ha. Do you feel humiliated? Ha ha. Your daughter. I'm afraid she's already been fucked. Ha ha. I destroyed their martial arts foundation with my own hands. I'm afraid ordinary men can't do anything to them. I even broke a few of their meridians. Old Ma lay on the ground and vomited blood. I guess they're having fun now. June Typhoon, do you want to go over and take a look? I can tell you where they are. HM. Ha! Didn't you bombard Shi Yun Feng with prostitutes in the past? Are you having fun now? Are you having fun now? Let me tell you, if Shi Yun Feng is still alive, I'll definitely send him prostitutes. Ha ha! The king of Zhongyuan's face was livid. He flew over and punched him repeatedly. Old Ma kept vomiting blood, but he was still laughing. Don't worry, I know you want to have fun, but I won't tell you. Ha ha! You call me a bastard? Ha ha! If your daughter can give birth in the future, she'll give birth to... Smack! The king of Zhongyuan's punch landed on his mouth. All his teeth fell to the ground. Even half of his tongue was smashed in an instant. However, Hua Qinshu was still mumbling incoherently. He tried his best to say, "You're a bastard." Ha ha! Shut up. The king of Zhongyuan was furious. He grabbed Old Ma's hair and lifted him up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut your mouth. Old Ma smiled happily. Suddenly, he winked. Your Highness, if those prostitutes know that they're having fun with the king of Zhongyuan's precious daughter, how excited would they be? Bastard. Shut up, shut up. The king of Zhongyuan struck Old Horse's body crazily, his bones cracking. Old Horse laughed maniacally as he kept spewing blood. However, his words became more and more vicious. You are ruthless. The king of Zhongyuan stopped abruptly and said fiercely, Do you want to die? Are you trying to provoke me so that I'll kill you? Old bastard, how could it be so cheap? Hua Qinshu laughed. I've hurt you to this extent, and you still don't want to kill me? Do you have such deep feelings for me? Ha ha. Come, let me recover. I will continue to be your butler. I want your heart to fly away. This king wants to crush your bones inch by inch. I'll cut you into pieces bit by bit, but I won't let you die so easily. Hua Qinshu laughed mockingly. June Typhoon, I'm afraid you don't know that I'm from the Eastern Army. Have you never heard of the Eastern Army? Come at me. Don't even mention begging for mercy. My face will change color, and my smile will fade a little. I will say that you, June Typhoon, have guts. The king of Zhongyuan was stunned for a moment, because he knew it was the truth. This bunch of fugitives from the Eastern Army were really tough. In this aspect, they were number one in the 3 continents. This was recognized by everyone. In other words, torture was meaningless to Hua Qinshu, especially when he had already achieved his final goal, but he still wanted to stay here and watch him die. In fact, this person no longer cared about his own life. Torture of life and death was nothing to this kind of person. The king of Zhongyuan grabbed him by the chest. Tell me your name. Let me know who defeated me, and I will send you on your way. Old Ma looked at him suspiciously and said, Do you mean what you say? This king is the king of Zhongyuan. King of Zhongyuan? What are you? Old Ma spat out a mouthful of pus and blood in disdain. He said disdainfully, The title king of the Central Plains doesn't even have a credit limit to me. The king of Zhongyuan was furious. Seems like you were just stubborn. You don't dare to tell me your name? Old Ma laughed. I'm so scared of you. Why wouldn't I dare? Why would I be scared of a loner like you? He laughed wildly and said, I am the Eastern Army's snake gentleman. I am Hua Qinshu. Hua Qinshu. Snake gentleman. Hua Qinshu. The king of Zhongyuan nodded fiercely. Good Hua Qinshu. Good Hua Qinshu. The more he thought about it, the angrier he felt. His many years of planning had been ruined in the hands of such a person he had long recognized as one of his own, a person he trusted, a person he was close to. Moreover, it was for such a baffling reason that he found hard to believe and even more incomprehensible that after thinking about it, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Who did it? The king of Zhongyuan asked fiercely. If it was just Hua Qinshu alone, he could not have done so many things. He could not do it even if he was tired to death. Besides, he did not have the time. Who's the one who did it? Your question is so naive and stupid. Hua Qinshu laughed wildly. You think you can get the answer? Ha! Stupid, stupid. The king of Zhongyuan looked up to the sky and roared. Hua Qinshu, Your brothers don't even know what you have done, do they? Hua Qinshu laughed strangely. Why? You want to make a name for me? You want to tell them that I have done so many things for them in secret? Then I will thank you. Ha ha. I was worried that I could not let them know that I have done so much for them. Ha ha. As you wish. The king of Zhongyan let out a thunderous roar. As you wish. Suddenly, he grabbed Hua Qinshu and flew away. Now that the king of Zhongyuan had lost his last bit of consolation, he had gone completely crazy. Years of hard work had been ruined. All his subordinates were destroyed. All his forces were gone. All his children were gone. All his women were gone. Everything that was gone. Everything was gone. The king of Zhongyuan carried Hua Qinshu, who had been beaten to a pulp, and flew into the sky. Hua Qinshu had been tortured by him until he was like a pile of mud, but he was still conscious. He was still cursing and muttering that his vicious cursing did not stop all the way. And he was still laughing. Good. Good. I'm so awesome. I'm so awesome. Ha ha. He was still feeling proud that he had managed to bring the renowned king of the Central Plains to such a state. What an incredible achievement this was. How dare you kill my brother? How dare you hurt my brother? Damn it. I want to see how many people in this world dare to hurt my brother after I am gone. Ha ha. Hua Qinshu laughed wildly. He knew that he was about to die, but the joy in his heart was sweet and refreshing. He was still extremely happy. This is what it means to repay kindness and revenge. This is what it means to repay kindness and revenge. I am so awesome. I am so awesome. Hua Qinshu laughed and cursed all the way, but the king of Zhongyuan ignored him. The king of Zhongyuan's spiritual world had collapsed at this moment. The cold wind blew on the king of Zhongyuan's face. His body was shaking. Tears flowed from the corners of his eyes and were blown away by the wind. Gone that everything was gone, that his beautiful wife and concubines, his plan of having 100 children, his wealth and glory, his ambition, his power, and his ability to command hundreds of people, his child, from a small meatball, grew up bit by bit, learning how to speak. All the way today, all of them were destroyed. No one survived. They had all turned into piles of rotten flesh. On the snowy ground, the crown prince's eyes, which were still open, were looking at his wife's naked body. Not far away was his grandson, whose brain had been smashed. Ahihi, the king of Zhongyuan howled in pain. He did not even know what he was screaming for. He only felt that his heart was constantly exploding and hurting, but I had already stopped. I was already disheartened. I had already accepted my fate. I only wanted to live the rest of my life in peace. The 4 great commanders had already agreed to let me live on and protect my family for the rest of my life. The left and right heavenly kings had already let me go and stopped pursuing the matter. Even Yi Changqing and the rest could only look for opportunities in secret. They might not even have a chance. I will not give them a chance. Whenever they came, they would die. I have already accepted my fate. But you, Hua Qinshu, did not let me go. What does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with you? At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan only felt that he had already broken down. Even in his dreams, he did not expect that when he had already accepted his fate, such a person would jump out. Hua Qinshu, that you have done so many things to avenge your brothers. You are so cruel, so vicious. Tonight, I will let you see with your own eyes how your brothers will die in my hands. You have done so many things. You are so cruel and vicious. Tonight, I will let you see with your own eyes how your brothers will die in my hands. One by one, they will die in my hands. I want you to see with your own eyes how your brothers will be tortured to death one by one in front of you. I will kill all your brothers. Then, I will directly kill that shit-stir Zhuo who suddenly appeared. Then, I will rush into the Hidden Dragon High School and start a massacre. I will let your group of geniuses be buried with me. This prince's life is already ruined. Then, let millions of people experience this kind of pain that makes them wish they were dead. Your Highness, 2 figures flew over and landed in front of the king of Zhongyuan. They were his only 2 subordinates. It could be said that they were the only ones left. Get out of the way. Your Highness, think thrice. Think thrice. One of them urged anxiously. Think thrice. Chapter 770. The king of Zhongyuan howled and laughed bitterly. Inyan guessed, Netherworld, how can I calm down? How can I think twice? My entire family was destroyed by this son of a bitch. They're all dead. They're all dead. Now I have nothing. Now I have nothing. I really have nothing left. The king of Zhongyuan howled. If I don't take revenge, how can I, Jun Taifeng, continue to breathe? Your Highness, no need to persuade me. I'm going to kill tonight. If you want to come with me, then we'll kill until the world is turned upside down. If you don't, I won't blame you. From now on, we'll go our separate ways. The king of Zhongyuan stood in the air, carrying Hua Qianshou with a sorrowful expression. Farewell, both of you. Then, he carried Hua Qianshou and flew toward the direction of Hidden Dragon High School. Behind him, the two looked at each other. At the same time, they stopped in the air. Inyan guessed, what do you say? The eyes of the Netherworld assassin behind the mask were like will-o'-the-wisps. Netherworld assassin, what do you plan to do? Inyan guest's voice was indifferent. It's just a mortal world. The king of the Central Plains has done me a great favor, since he has decided to turn the world upside down tonight to get rid of his hindrance. I'll sacrifice my life to give him the last bit of prestige. No matter what, he's still a king. Even if he's at the end of his rope, he should still have some dignity. The Netherworld assassin, who had never taken off his mask in his entire life, slowly pulled off his mask, revealing a chiseled face. What about you? The Netherworld assassin looked at Inyan guest with bright eyes. My situation is different from yours. I can watch from the sidelines, but at most, I can't help either side, Inyan guest said indifferently. Watch from the sidelines? Help neither side? The Netherworld assassin was furious. Inyan guest, I didn't expect you. Inyan guest said indifferently. I'm a subordinate of the king of the right. I only successfully entered the king of Zhongyuan's group 3 years ago, but I've never been trusted. Helping neither side is the limit. And the reason I don't want to help the king of the right is because I'm afraid of causing criticism, not because of any other reason. After all, the king has already let the king of Zhongyuan go. The Netherworld assassin was instantly at a loss for words. He actually didn't know what to say. I'm from the heavenly king of the right. This sentence was really straightforward to the extreme. This reason was too sufficient and indisputable. Yu Ming, you should actually leave. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't get involved in this mess. Inyan guest said faintly. Jun Taifeng, what kind of prestige does he have? Is such a person worthy of your life and death? Where else can I go? The Spectre assassin stood with his sword in hand. For a moment, he was at a loss. He originally wanted to die with the king of Zhongyuan, but when he heard him say that he was under the king of the right's command, his heart shattered. Let's go to the Sun Moon Pass. Inyan guest said sincerely. Life is but a lifetime. If you can sacrifice your life for Jun Taifeng, why can't you sacrifice your life for the astral souls? With your cultivation, it won't be difficult for you to clear your name. I can report this to the Heavenly King and give you a chance. The Netherworld assassin only felt that at this moment, he was all alone in the world. For a moment, he was actually distracted. Okay, the Netherworld assassin finally sighed deeply. I'll go and take a look at Jun Taifeng's ending. Inyan guest said, I've just reported this matter to the Heavenly King. If there are no accidents, tonight should be the king of Zhongyuan's. Last song. Bah, Jun Taifeng really doesn't deserve last song. It's my fault for using the wrong words. The Netherworld assassin hesitated for a moment. His voice was a bit dry as he said, Can I go with you? Of course. But I want to warn you, don't act rashly. Even if it's just a thought, it's the difference between life and death. I don't have the ability to save you. I understand. 2 figures, riding on the wind, chased in the direction where the king of Zhongyuan went. The king of Zhongyuan carried Hua Qianshou and had already drifted far away. However, his movement speed was getting slower and slower. He was waiting to see if the last 2 subordinates would catch up. Even if one of them caught up, the king of Zhongyuan would feel that he wouldn't be too miserable in this life. Even if he were to die, there would still be people following him. However, after waiting for a long time, there was still only the whistling cold wind behind him. It was quiet. Not even one person followed him. None of them came. At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan's heart was as cold as ice. Suddenly, he felt that this world was really lifeless. Ha ha! Hua Qinshu suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed until tears and snot flowed down his face. You're waiting for them? Do you want one last consolation book? Ha 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 ha! You actually think they'll come? Die with you? Go to hell together? I'm dying of laughter. I'm dying of laughter. You? Ha ha! Ha ha ha! You're dreaming. You're a fucking stray now. Take a piss and look at yourself. Ha ha! You actually want loyal subordinates now? Just you? Trash like you? Ha ha! In your dreams. Shut up. Shut your mouth. The king of Zhongyuan only felt that the volcano in his heart had completely erupted. It exploded. No one came. Why didn't anyone come? Even the last subordinates of the two of you have left. The king of Zhongyuan carried Hua Qinshu and turned into a flash of light, passing through space and rushing toward the hidden dragon high school. His bright yellow robe flashed across the night sky. The three-clawed golden dragon robe fluttered in the air, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. From this moment on, the king of Zhongyuan did not look back anymore. He pushed his speed to the maximum, down at the hidden dragon high school villa area. It was already 11 p.m. at night. Zhuo Changlu and Wu Yuding got up from the balcony and prepared to go down to rest. However, at this moment, they suddenly frowned at the same time and looked into the distance. Obviously, they noticed that someone was flying toward them from the other side like a madman, full of murderous intent. That monstrous aura of hatred could be clearly felt even from afar. The king of Zhongyuan, Zhuo Changlu, frowned. Is this guy crazy? Wu Yuding sighed softly. It's a pity. The king of 100 battles still can't keep his bloodline. Zhuo Changlu sighed softly. Let the royal family adopt one. In the neighboring villa, Yi Changqing was reading in the study when he suddenly felt uneasy. A monstrous aura was already pressing down on him. Yi Changqing did not dare to be negligent. He reacted immediately. His aura suddenly erupted and he shouted, "Who is it?" He was about to fly out. With a boom, the person had already landed in the courtyard in front of the villa. With a thunderous roar, he shouted, "Yi Changqing, come out." Yi Changqing's figure flashed and appeared at the door. The king of Zhongyuan. Yi Changqing looked at the king of Zhongyuan, who was already like a madman, in confusion. He frowned and asked, "Your Highness, why have you come in the middle of the night?" Well, what was he holding in his hand? With a whoosh, the king of Zhongyuan threw the bloody body in his hand toward Yi Changqing. Yi Changqing dodged instinctively. The body immediately fell to the ground in front of him. Although the body was covered in wounds and was severely injured, he was still breathing. He turned over with difficulty and lay face up on the ground. His face, which was covered in blood, was still laughing happily. This person was severely injured. There was no hope for him. With Yi Changqing's rich experience, he could tell at a glance that this person was no different from a dead person. All the meridians in his body were broken. His internal organs were also destroyed and almost turned into powder. He was only relying on the last breath of a high-level martial artist to hang on to his last breath of life. Once this last breath of life dissipated, he would die and his Tao would vanish. Such an injury was destined to be incurable. In this situation, with such injuries, even if a deity came to save him, even if the 7 sword emperors of the 12 great shamans Tao League were present at the same time, they could only watch him die slowly. At most, a martial artist's original soul would not be destroyed, and there would be a chance for him to be reincarnated. This is Housekeeper Ma? Yi Changqing carefully identified the man and exclaimed in surprise. Based on his understanding of the king of Zhongyuan's influence, Steward Ma was an unparalleled loyal old dog to the king of Zhongyuan. Many despicable things were done by this fellow for the king of Zhongyuan. It was precisely because of this that Yi Changqing increasingly did not understand the king of Zhongyuan's purpose in doing this. Butler Ma, the king of Zhongyuan, laughed crazily. You only recognize Butler Ma? Ha ha ha. This is your good brother, Yi Changqing. You don't recognize him? Ha ha. You don't recognize him? Hua Qinshu panted with difficulty. He opened his eyes and looked at the king of Zhongyan. He cursed with all his strength. Jun Taifeng, fuck you, fuck you. Fuck you. Ha ha. I'm so happy. Ha ha. Yi Changqing was shocked. Not only had he seen the king of Zhongyuan's butler many times, but he had also interacted with him many times. This was a scheming, sinister ghost domain man. How could he be like this at this moment? How could he be treated like this by the king of Zhongyuan? But why was he still cursing? What did the king of Zhongyuan just say? He said this person was his brother? How could this be? Who could this person be? Hua Qinshu. The king of Zhongyuan laughed bitterly. I fulfilled your last wish. Why? You don't dare to tell your brother your name? Fuck you. Hua Qinshu panted with difficulty and spat out a mouthful of saliva. The moment he heard this name, Yi Changqing felt cold all over, but he also felt his blood boiling. Hua Qinshu? Qinshu? Yi Changqing staggered and his eyes widened. He suddenly threw himself in front of Hua Qinshu and hissed, You're Qinshu? You're my brother Qinshu? Hua Qinshu chuckled and his eyes softened. He murmured, Boss Yi, I've avenged my brothers. I've avenged my brothers. Chapter 771. Qinshu. Yi Changqing screamed. His body trembled as he hastily took out medicine from his storage ring. Bottles after bottles of ointment. He poured them on Hua Qinshu and said, You are really Qinshu. How would you be like this? How would you end up like this? It's useless. Hua Qinshu gulped. His eyes were smiling. It's useless. But I will drink some more. Bossy, I killed the king of Zhongyuan's wife, children, illegitimate children, including his crown prince. In short, the king of Zhongyuan's grandsons and granddaughters. All of them. How does it feel? Ha ha. Hua Qinshu laughed maniacally. He spat out the liquid he just drank along with the blood clots. Kill the men, rape the women, then kill them. Not a single one was left alive. Not a single one escaped. Ha ha ha. Hua Qinshu laughed strangely and coughed. How dare he bully us? How dare he hurt us? Motherfucker. The king of Zhongyuan. Who is he? I will kill him. His whole family. Damn it. Ha ha. I can't believe I could do such a big thing in my life. This is so fucking awesome. Yi Changqing's tears gushed out like a fountain. Don't talk anymore. Save your breath. You, the king of the Central Plains, Li Lai, roared. Yi Changqing, call all your brothers out. Today, I will let this bastard watch as his brothers die, one by one in my hands. King of Zhongyuan screamed crazily. Or I will die in your hands. Tonight, let's settle everything once and for all. And, ha ha, King of Zhongyuan howled. He was like a wolf king who had all his wolves killed. He was howling alone on the mountain with wounds all over his body. Hua Qinshu's voice was urgent. Don't be fooled by him. Boss Yi, you should run now. As long as you can avoid this moment, he won't be able to do anything to you. We have avenged ourselves. I have done enough. I provoked him to come here. Just to say goodbye. Tell our brothers. I don't know you anymore. Yi Changqing slowly straightened his body, his eyes suddenly blossoming with an extremely sharp light. Good. Today I'll settle this with you. Me too. I want to settle this with you. With a cold voice, Grandma Sure, Yu Jurin, who was next door, also leaped over with a long sword in hand. Her eyes were filled with bone-piercing hatred as she looked at the prince of Zhongyuan. Yi Changqing had already made the call. He knew that the king of the Central Plains was a formidable opponent. Back then, Cheng Gang had been severely injured by his sword and had almost died. Even if his brothers joined forces, they might not be a match for him. But tonight, seeing Hua Qinshu in such a miserable state, Yi Changqing could no longer control his temper. You want to end it? Then let's end it. Even if we have to bet the lives of all our brothers, we will fight you. Come. He dialed the number. 5 or 6 minutes later, Wen Xingtian, Lu Yichuan, Xiang Quangren, and Cheng Gang came one after another. There are 3 more brothers. They went to the front line to check the situation. Because the students have to change the defense, they went to check the situation there first. They won't be able to participate in this battle. Yi Changqing carefully knelt in front of Hua Qinshu and said, "They can't come in person to see you off. Qinshu, so many brothers are coming to see me off. What's there to be dissatisfied with?" Hua Qinshu laughed. "Satisfied, so satisfied. Boss, light me a cigarette. Light a few more. I want to smoke. I want to smoke to my heart's content." Yi Changqing hurriedly turned his head. "Who has a cigarette?" Then he remembered that he had a cigarette in his house to entertain guests. With a wave of his hand, he directly broke the window, grabbed a cigarette, opened it, hurriedly lit it, and sent it to Hua Qinshu's mouth. "Qinshu, smoke slowly. There's plenty. Okay. Ha ha ha." Hua Qinshu had no teeth. He sucked the cigarette between his lips and spat out smoke. "Good. Boss." When Xing Qian and the others looked at Yi Changqing and the steward of the Wang residence of the Central Plains, they were puzzled. "This is Qinshu." Yi Changqing carefully treated the wounds on Hua Qinshu's body, especially the bloodstains on his face. He said sadly, "Hua Qinshu." Qinshu. Hearing this name, the four people were all shocked. The steward of the Wang residence of the Central Plains was actually him. Even Grandma Shi was surprised. She didn't know Hua Qinshu, but she had heard Shi Yunfeng talk about him more than once. Every time he talked about him, Shi Yunfeng would gnash his teeth and scold him. However, the pain and resentment in his heart couldn't be concealed. He had left a deep impression on her and was hard to forget. Chen Guiying was suddenly enlightened. "So he is Qinshu. So that's how it is. When I barged into the imperial residence, I was severely injured in an instant. Initially, I thought that I would not be able to survive. However, after fighting with the butler, I was able to fight my way out of the imperial residence. So this is the truth." Hua Qinshu looked at Chen Guiying with the cigarette in his mouth and laughed strangely. "If it wasn't for me, your bones would be rotten by now. Chen Guiying, I would have returned the favor of sucking my ass a long time ago. It's a pity that you didn't know and understand until today. You idiot." "Qinshu." Chen Guiying's eyes were red. How did you become like this?" Hua Qinshu laughed strangely and was extremely proud. "Back then, each and every one of you were so condescending and arrogant to me. Bah, wasn't it just sucking my ass? Fuck, did you really think that I owed you a big favor and couldn't repay it? Each and every one of you thought that I saved your lives more than you saved my life. But now, Hua Qinshu declared proudly, I helped you. Get your revenge. Now you owe me. You must remember to pay me back. You got your revenge." Everyone was stunned. When Boss Yi was attacked, it was King of Zhongyuan who did it. Xiang Quangren's incident was also King of Zhongyuan's doing. And Shi Yunfeng's incident, it was King of Zhongyuan who took a fancy to Shi Yunfeng's wife. He schemed against Shi Yunfeng and killed him. Chen Guiying's incident was also King of Zhongyuan's doing. Hua Qinshu gritted his teeth and said, "These things, I knew some of them, but I didn't know some of them. I didn't have time to stop some of them. When old Shi died and Chen Guiying's girl was kidnapped, I decided to counterattack and kill Jun Taifeng's entire family. I hid in the Wang residence for so many years. Finally, I found a chance. I got rid of King of Zhongyuan's henchmen. It was me who told 100 years of loyalty. I am that bastard's confidant. I'm a loyal dog. I know every single one of his mistresses. I know every single one of his illegitimate children. I know every single one of his illegitimate daughters. The last few illegitimate daughters. I destroyed their martial arts and sold them. Ha ha. Chen Guiying, this is the interest I got from my granddaughters. Those few. Ha ha. They are quite fair. If you have time, you should go and take care of their business. I have already killed that bastard's bloodline, but I still have to thank him." Hua Qinshu laughed wildly. He spat out a mouthful of blood and gasped for breath. "Thank you, Jun Taifeng. Ha! You are such a fucking idiot. You brought me here so that I can tell these guys about my glorious deeds. You fucking... Why do you have to listen to them again? Ha ha! Do you have fun listening to them?" Jun Taifeng stared at him. "Just tell them. If you don't tell them what you have done and how much you have sacrificed, they won't risk their lives to fight me to the death. I know you guys are old foxes. If you want to run away, I can't catch you all. I have to give you guys a reason to fight me to the death. I believe you. You said that after what you have done, as long as you are here, they would rather die than run away. I said that I will let you watch your brothers die one by one in front of you. I won't go back on my words. Later, I will pull out their tendons and skin them. You let me taste the feeling of being separated from my own flesh and blood. I will let you taste it too. King Zhongyun laughed crazily. Hua Qianshou, why don't you have a family? You old bastard, why don't you have a family? I will enjoy it even more that way. Hua Qianshou was still laughing. He said viciously, I don't necessarily have a family. Those illegitimate daughters of yours. I have enjoyed them several times. Maybe they already have my seed? Haha. You can go and check. Find out which one is mine. The two of them cursed each other. Their filthy words were endless. They were extremely vicious. However, Yi Changqing, Xiang Quangren, Wen Xingtian, Cheng Gaiying, Lu Yichuan, Grandma Shi, and Yu Jian were all trembling. The main culprit. It was him, King Zhongyuan. Wen Xingtian pulled out his sword with a clang. His long-lost name, 100,000 Slaughter, reappeared in the world. Sword light wrapped around his body. He suddenly shouted, Today's battle. Either you die or I die. Jun Taifeng, show me your weapon. On the other side, Hua Qianshou was coughing. His voice had become unprecedentedly weak. Brothers, remember, live on. Play with more women for me. Do more bad things. If you dare to leave with me, I will look down on you. Even though their hearts were grieving to the extreme, Yi Changqing and the others still felt a burst of speechlessness. This guy's temper hadn't changed after so many years. He still didn't want to be a good person at all. At the last moment, in such a sad atmosphere, the words he said still made them want to beat him to death. Chapter 772. Are you done with your last words? The king of Zhongyuan laughed wildly. Hua Qianshou, old bastard, don't die. Keep your last breath. Watch me kill all your brothers in front of you. Hua Qianshou laughed desperately. Good. Today, I will open my eyes and watch the king of Zhongyuan's bloodline be completely wiped out. Ha. Brothers, kill him. Kill him for me. His bloodline is gone. Kill him, and it will be clean. Ha. Sword light flashed, solemn and magnificent. The king of Zhongyuan's sword of king path was the first to strike. Yellow light flashed, and the sky crossing cross flashed. Wen Xingtian let out a shrill cry and took the lead to transform into a ball of dazzling sword light as he rushed forward. At this moment, Wen Xingtian had fused all of his cultivation into this single sword strike. Old bastard, I will kill you. Xiang Quangren's sky piercer, Cheng Gaiying's long saber, Yi Changqing and Lu Yichuan's swords, and Yu Jian's mountain river sword all struck out at the same time. Their target was King of Zhongyuan, Jun Taifeng. Wen Xingtian was in the middle, and the others attacked together. They attacked from above, below, left, and right. Once they attacked, it was a battle formation that they were extremely familiar with. Although Shi Yinfeng was not here, Yu Jian, with a long sword in her hand, made up for this flaw with a perfect posture. The six masters attacked with all their strength, intending to kill. Hua Qianshou was lying on the ground, tilting his head desperately to watch the battle. Suddenly, tears came out of his eyes, and he murmured, Battle formation. This is a battle formation. With a loud bang, the battle began in an instant. There were 7 people on both sides. Everyone's eyes were red, and they were all crazy. They only wanted to kill each other. There was only one word in everyone's mind: revenge. Yi Changqing and Wen Xingtian only had one thought, and so did the king of Zhongyuan. Revenge. Both sides were crazy, but on the other side, Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan, who were alarmed by the noise nearby, hurried upstairs. They were relieved to see that their parents were fine. Something happened to Principal Yi. I have to go and take a look. Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart burned with anxiety as he flew away. Zhuo Xiaoyan followed him. Will he be all right? Wu Yuding asked worriedly. I'm fine, Zhuo Chonglu said, I've just asked Xiao Yu, and she's already arranged everything. June Taifeng. This is the final madness, the madness after losing his mental balance. He can't see past everything, and he feels that everyone has betrayed him. He doesn't want to live anymore, and that's why he's doing this. You don't want to live anymore? Wu Yuding was a little puzzled. Yeah. Zhuo Changlu told him what he heard from Yu Dongtian. Wu Yuding sighed as she listened. She didn't expect Hua Qianshou's revenge to be so extreme. If it were an ordinary person, most of them would just wait for an opportunity to kill. Very few people would really eliminate the source of the trouble, and even rape the victim's daughter. But this snake gentleman Hua Qianshou's revenge was from the cruelest and most vicious point of view. He only had one goal from the beginning, to end his family line and to humiliate and ravage. So he did everything in the most extreme, most ruthless, most vicious, and even the dirtiest, most despicable, and most extreme way of revenge. No wonder the king of Zhongyuan was driven crazy by him, and didn't want to live anymore. That originally, the king of Zhongyuan, who knew that he had lost, had planned to live the rest of his life peacefully and not cause any more trouble. This was the last dignity and care that the four great generals gave him. But Hua Qianshou didn't want to let him go, because he knew that he hadn't avenged his brothers yet, and he couldn't let it end like this. That was why he had directed this play and led the situation to the current state. Wu Yuding wanted to say that this was too cruel, but when she thought of the things the king of Zhongyuan had done all these years, which one of them wasn't cruel to others? Now that he suffered such revenge, he deserved it. This was the cycle of karma. This battle had entered a white-hot state from the very beginning. It had only been half a minute, but everyone was already injured. When Xingtian's shoulder was dripping with blood, Chang Gai's back had a bloody wound, Yi Changqing's face was bleeding, Lu Yichun's right hand was limp, and Grandma Shi was spitting blood. Xiang Quangren exerted the most strength, but he was also the most severely shaken, bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his 5 internal organs were burning. The king of Zhongyuan's condition wasn't much better. One of his ears was missing, and his face was covered in blood. His shoulder was also dripping with blood. But the king of Zhongyuan was the one who suffered the least injuries. He shouted crazily, "Hua Qianshou, watch and see. The first one to die in front of you will be when Xingtian." Before he finished speaking, his body spun, and the air trembled. The space was faintly distorted, and Yi Changqing and the others were pushed out of the battle. His sword was pointed at Wen Xingtian. Sky Soar Realm. Yi Changqing was shocked, and he shouted, "Xingtian, retreat." The king of Zhongyuan had broken through to the Sky Soar Realm. "Why should we retreat?" Wen Xingtian let out a fierce roar. The sword in his hand was cold, and the sword light seemed to explode. He attacked with all his might. "How long can you retreat for? Let's fight." When Xingtian roared, "He's just a Sky Soar Realm induced by drugs. I'm not afraid of him." Instead of retreating, he charged at the king of Zhongyuan. Everyone could see that when Xingtian's muscles were bulging and his body was expanding. Clearly, when Xingtian was planning to self-detonate and risk his life to fight the king of Zhongyuan. He wanted to create an opportunity for his brothers to perish together with the king of Zhongyuan. Although, when Xingtian's cultivation was much lower than the king of Zhongyuan's, he was still in peak condition. His spiritual energy and soul were still intact. Even a Sky Soar Realm cultivator couldn't underestimate the power of his self-detonation. If it were a Sky Soar Realm cultivator who had survived hundreds of battles, when Xingtian's self-detonation wouldn't be able to stop him. However, the king of Zhongyuan had always lived like a prince. Although he had plenty of battle experience, the gap between him and Wen Xingtian, who had survived hundreds of battles, was like heaven and earth. Therefore, Wen Xingtian instantly determined that his self-detonation would be effective. Revenge! When Xingtian roared, his eyes filled with hatred. Blood feud! The king of Zhongyuan saw Wen Xingtian coming at him menacingly, but he didn't panic. He swung his sword of King Path several hundred times and met Wen Xingtian head-on. He had absolute confidence that after this attack, when Xingtian wouldn't exist in this world anymore. Similarly, when Xingtian wouldn't have the chance to come into contact with him. Although the power of his self-detonation was great, it would be futile as long as he didn't come into contact with him. At this moment, a cool breeze suddenly appeared, and the whole space suddenly became cold. A girl in white silently appeared and flew over. The snow-like sword in her hand was extremely cold, and it turned into surging sword energy that filled the sky. Swoosh! The sword light pierced through the king of Zhongyuan's Sky Soar Realm Cultivator's spatial seal, causing the surging cold air to freeze the world. The snow-like sword landed on the king of Zhongyuan's Sword of King Path. The person who attacked was Zhuo Xiaoyan. With a pu sound, the two swords intersected, coming into contact with each other. The king of Zhongyuan only felt a bone-piercing coldness that suddenly traveled from the hand holding the sword to his elbow. In an instant, his entire right hand didn't seem to belong to him, and he couldn't feel anything. His sword technique also collapsed, and he couldn't make a move. Just as when Xingtian said, he was only a Skysoar realm cultivator who had been raised by medicine, and his spiritual energy was far from a real Skysoar realm cultivator. As for his combat experience, he was far from a real Skysoar realm cultivator. The king of Zhongyuan was both shocked and furious. He snorted, "Where did this little bitch come from? You're courting death." His empty left palm suddenly turned golden and jade-like, and he slammed it out madly. Even though the two of them had only been in contact for a short while, the king of Zhongyuan had already keenly sensed that the woman who had appeared out of nowhere might have created a result that was almost like a dream. But at the end of the day, she only had a unique cultivation technique. Her cultivation realm was only SOSO, and he had a high chance of killing her with one strike. Zhuo Xiaoyan's pretty face was as cold as frost. Her white dress fluttered in the wind, and her sword was light and graceful. She was like a fairy dancing in the wind. Hundreds of sword strikes in succession carried extreme coldness that could freeze all things, and completely blocked the king of Zhongyuan's attack. She was only at the peak of Cloud Transformation Realm, and she hadn't even reached the God Reigning Realm. However, her foundation and accumulation were so profound that any expert would be stunned by her. The king of Zhongyuan had exhausted most of his energy to perform the Skysoar Realm spatial seal, leaving Yi Changqing and the others outside the battle. He was facing Wen Xingtian alone. She had seized the opportunity to enter, and it could be said that she had seized the moment when Jun Taifeng's strength was at its lowest. Zhuo Xiaoyan seized the opportunity and broke the king of Zhongyuan's attack with a single sword strike. She also seized the opportunity to attack and forced the king of Zhongyuan to continue his counterattack. When Xingtian let out a muffled groan, but his body dodged. The situation had changed, and it was meaningless to continue using self-detonation. Since it was useless, no one would want to self-detonate. Unless they were in a desperate situation, who would really want to die? In the blink of an eye, the king of Zhongyuan's golden jade hand and the tip of Zhuo Xiaoyan's sword had collided dozens of times. Thin lines of blood shot out from the king of Zhongyuan's palm. The sharpness of the Spirit Snatcher sword, coupled with the power of Zhuo Xiaoyan's Moon Soul Sutra, was something that even the king of Zhongyuan's physique couldn't withstand. Just as the blood spurted out, it was instantly frozen. The king of Zhongyuan's left and right hands were injured one after another, and they were frozen stiff by the extreme cold. The mysterious ice chi that Zhuo Xiaoyan had refined during this period of time poured into his blood vessels and skin in an extremely frenzied manner. The situation of the battle didn't develop as the king of Zhongyuan expected. Zhuo Xiaoyan's strength and combat power, especially her cultivation method, were all beyond his expectations. After this round of confrontation, Zhuo Xiaoyan grunted, and her pretty face flushed red. Her body floated backward, and with a flip, she retreated to the top of the wall. Her delicate body swayed a little, and then she steadied herself again. She held her long sword and stared at the battle ring. The moment Zhuo Xiaoyan broke the space seal, Yi Changqing and the others were all veterans of hundreds of battles. Their combat experience was so rich that it made one's hair stand on end. How could they let go of such an opportunity? They rushed up at the first moment, and while protecting Wen Xingtian, they joined hands and launched a fierce counterattack against the king of Zhongyuan. Chapter 773. Xiang Quangren took the lead. With a loud roar, he descended from the sky like a god, his overlord halberd smashing down like a mountain-splitting axe. At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan's left and right hands were frozen, and his internal organs were invaded by Zhuo Xiaoyan's cold air. His combat strength had been reduced by more than half. With Zhuo Xiaoyan's current cultivation, she could only attack once in a battle of this level, even if she concentrated all her cultivation and aimed at the moment when the opponent's strength was reduced. However, this one attack was enough to turn the tide of the battle and turn defeat into victory. Faced with Xiang Quangren's fierce attacks, the king of Zhongyuan did not dare to take them head-on. He quickly swayed his body and constantly changed his mysterious footwork, trying his best to avoid the continuous attacks that were like a storm. Wen Xingtian moved forward and stabbed the king of Zhongyuan's thigh with his sword. The king of Zhongyuan did not make a sound and kicked Wen Xingtian away. Lu Yichuan stabbed the queen of Zhongyuan's waist with his sword but was kicked in the chest. He spat out blood and retreated. Xiang Quangren once again descended from the sky, the overlord's halberd striking the prince of Zhongyuan's back like a thunderbolt. With a dull thud, the prince of Zhongyuan let out a muffled groan as his body lunged forward, directly meeting Yi Changqing's sword head-on. With a poof, the sword pierced through his shoulder. However, the prince of Zhongyuan's yuan qi surged all over his body, causing Wen Xingtian's sword, which was originally stuck in his right leg, to fly out, the hilt ruthlessly hitting Yi Changqing's chest. Then, blood spurted out from the wound on his leg and hit Yi Changqing's face like a 1,000-pound hammer. Yi Changqing grunted and fell to the sky. He was knocked into the stars and could not distinguish between anything and everything. Roar! With a loud roar, the king of Zhongyuan's right hand, which could barely move, blocked Cheng Gai's attack. Unfortunately, he was not as agile as usual, and 3 of his fingers fell off. However, the king of Zhongyuan grunted, and the yellow light on his body suddenly flashed wildly. Suddenly, blood spurted out from the broken fingers on his hand, knocking Cheng Gai's sword aside. The sword was covered in frost. The king of Zhongyuan took advantage of the moment when his fingers were cut off to release the cold air that invaded his body and counterattacked Cheng Gai. Cheng Gai roared, his face covered in frost. The Zhongyuan king channeled all of his attack power into his body and forced the icy power out of his hands. For this, he paid the price of severe internal injuries. The 2 blood swords even caused him to spit out half of the blood in his body. Zhongyuan's head was dizzy and his eyes were blurred. However, the other result of doing so was that the 6 of them wouldn't be able to seize the opportunity to beat him to death due to his stiff body. Zhuo Xiaoyan's ice seal had created an opportunity to instantly kill the king of Zhongyuan. However, the king of Zhongyuan's cultivation was too high a level. Was of the king of the sky realm, was of Zhongyuan's S of S's. Although he had to pay a hefty price, with his Skysoar realm cultivation base, he was still able to put up a fight against them. Just as the king of Zhongyuan was rejoicing over his choice and circulating his inner qi to allow his body to regain its agility, a cold light suddenly flashed. The mountain and river sword in Grandma Shi's hand flew out and shot over like a shooting star, piercing into the king of Zhongyuan's chest. This desperate gambit was the culmination of Grandma Shi's lifetime's cultivation. The king of Zhongyuan's assessed combat strength was depleted and his body was still stiff. Yet he was hit. Just as Grandma Shi was rejoicing over her success, the king of Zhongyuan grunted. Not only did the mountain and river sword fail to penetrate his body, but it also bounced off. A soft crack was heard, indicating that one of the king of Zhongyuan's ribs was broken. However, such a powerful attack only achieved this little result. His dragon robe, is a treasure." Xiang Quangren roared. The Overlord halberd descended again. Xiang Quangren had already come to this conclusion when he attacked the king of Zhongyuan's back. Grandma Shi's attack further confirmed this conclusion. However, the king of Zhongyuan had already activated the golden jade hand with his left hand and slammed his palm on the Overlord halberd. Xiang Quangren roared as the Overlord halberd flew out of his hand and into the night sky. His body was also sent flying like a broken ball. This was a long story. However, a series of unforeseen events happened in the blink of an eye. Out of the 7 people who were fighting, 6 of them were already heavily injured. The king of the Zhongyuan roared as he prepared to follow up with another attack. Although he was heavily injured and his combat strength was greatly reduced, he was still a Skysword realm expert after all. His endurance was far greater than Xiang Quangren and the others. Especially since he had already broken through the ice seal, he had regained his mobility. In this battle where both sides were heavily injured, the king of Zhongyuan regained the upper hand. Although he was in a sorry state and was heavily injured, with his limbs injured and even his fingers cut off, he was still the strongest among everyone present. He was far above everyone else. At this moment, the surrounding atmosphere changed again. The temperature of the entire place suddenly changed from the bone-chilling cold to the scorching heat of summer. In an instant, it became extremely hot. A huge sun suddenly appeared, and another figure flew into the air. The light was so dazzling that everyone present could not see anything. A young man's voice shouted, "Eat my sword." The king of Zhongyuan laughed maliciously. Although he could not see because of the sudden light, his ability to listen to the wind did not diminish. He could still take advantage of the situation and launch a large-scale counterattack. In particular, the person who shouted just now had a cultivation base that was not enough to reach the apex. At most, he was only at the cloud transformation realm. He was even weaker than the girl who attacked just now. The king of Zhongyuan's Sword of the King was brazen. It was mixed with the power of a torrential river. However, with a loud boom, 2 huge hammers arrived with great force. One of the hammers smashed onto the king of Zhongyuan's sword like the thunder god, splitting the sky, while the other smashed directly onto the king of Zhongyuan's palm. With a muffled bang, a hidden cold light flew out at an extremely fast speed. Zhou Xiaoduo let out a blood-curdling scream as he flew back like a rubber ball under the violent impact without any fuss. Although he had used the hammer to smash the sword and the hammer to the palm, catching the enemy off guard and taking advantage of the situation, Zhou Xiaoduo's cultivation base was worlds apart from the king of Zhongyuan's. It cannot be measured by logic. He could not even withstand the most basic rebounding force. If it were not for the fact that the hammers had already neutralized more than 80% of the rebounding force, this strike would have been enough to kill Zhou Xiaoduo. However, the effect of Zhou Xiaoduo's attack was immediate, and the effect was outstanding. The king of Zhongyuan closed his eyes abruptly. His cold light shot straight into his right eyelid. Even though he circulated his energy with all his might to resist, that cold light still broke through the vital chi seal on his eyelid and pierced halfway into his eye. The 7-inch all pierced a full 3 inches into his eyeball. The king of Zhongyuan's right eye was destroyed just like that. A gush of black blood also spurted out. The king of Zhongyuan staggered in excruciating pain. He cursed furiously, "Despicable!" The other party shouted, "Eat my sword!" Under the strong light, the king of Zhongyuan's vision was blocked. Although he could determine the direction of the other party's attack with his ability to listen to the wind, he could only use his sword to meet the other party's sword. In the end, what he received was a huge hammer. 2 consecutive hammers, one on his sword and the other on his hand. Both his hand and sword were destroyed. More importantly, a hidden weapon that came out of nowhere suddenly appeared, and the moment it appeared, it was already right in front of his eyes. It pierced his eyes, and there was no room for him to dodge. At that moment, the king of Zhongyuan was in so much pain that he wanted to die. This was the first time in his life that he had been plotted against so viciously. He was a noble to begin with. Even though his cultivation base was great, when it came to real battle experience, he was far from being able to compare to when Xingtian and the others. If when Xingtian was attacked while he could not see anything, his first choice would definitely be to retreat. However, when the king of Zhongyuan instantly determined that the other party's cultivation base was not high, he chose to move forward and wanted to kill the other party instantly. That was why he suffered such a great loss that he could practically be said to have died with a remaining grievance. Yes, there was also the fact that he had been injured repeatedly, his body was damaged, his body was cold and hot, the rotation of ice and fire, and other factors that greatly affected the king of Zhongyuan's senses. If that were not the case, with the ability of a Skysoar realm cultivator to listen to the wind, how could he possibly be able to tell that there was such a huge difference between the attack from a sword and a huge hammer? The king of Zhongyuan's luck had deteriorated, and even the situation that should not have happened at all had happened. So Xiaoduo, who was sent flying by the huge force, was caught by Zhuo Xiaoyan. He tilted his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. Panting, he muttered, as expected of an expert. Truly amazing. Then, he muttered, how dare he insult my wife? If I don't hit him twice with my hammer, I won't feel at ease. Even if he's a heavenly king, I'll still hit him twice with my hammer. I can't even bear to insult my wife. Even at such a critical moment, Zhuo Xiaoyan did not know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, she felt an inexplicable sweetness in her heart. While circulating her energy to heal him, she pouted and grumbled, only you can do that. Zhuo Xiaoduo's attack just now had been well planned. First, he used the blazing sun divine art to create a huge sun to confuse the enemy's eyes. Then, he called out for a sword, but in fact he used his hammer to confuse the enemy's judgment. The key to defeating the enemy was the surprise attack with the hidden weapons. In fact, what he used were two hidden weapons. He wanted to destroy the king of Zhongyuan's eyes and end this battle in one fell swoop. However, when he used the second hidden weapon, the surging energy was already close to him. His body involuntarily retreated, and as he leaned back instinctively, the hammer was deflected and sent flying. The wind howled as Cheng Gaing rushed over with a face full of frost. The six of them were fearless again. They surrounded the king of Zhongyuan and attacked him crazily, as if they were hanging on his body. The king of Zhongyuan's left hand was crippled by the hammer, and the sword in his right hand was bent into the shape of a bow. One of his eyes was blinded, and some of the awl's tip had penetrated his brain. This was the moment when the pain was the most intense. At the same time, it was also the moment when his mind was the most muddled. It was also the best opportunity to kill him. The six of them were experienced fighters. How could they give the king of Zhongyuan a chance to catch his breath? Amidst the king of Zhongyuan's crazed roars, the storm of attacks continued. At this moment, he had already lost count of how many attacks he had received. The attacks were like raindrops falling on his body, limbs, and bones. With a hysterical roar, the yellow light exploded for the last time. An unparalleled power accompanied by a mouthful of blood crazily spurted out. Chapter 774. Boom! A violent force erupted from the king of Zhongyuan's body. Cheng Gaing, Wen Xingtian, Yu Jiaran, and Lu Yichuan were sent flying at the same time. Their bones cracked in midair. Xiang Quangren took 3 steps back. His tall body collapsed as he spat out mouthfuls of blood. The overlord halberd in his hand broke into 3 pieces. Cheng Gaing and Yu Jiaran's mouths were dripping with blood as they spat out a piece of flesh. Both of them hated the king of Zhongyuan to the extreme. Even if they were sent flying, they still bit onto the king of Zhongyuan's flesh with all their might and tore it off. Meanwhile, Yi Changqing, who had the highest cultivation, was still fighting the king of Zhongyuan with all his might. Both of their limbs were wrapped around each other. Yi Changqing refused to let go no matter what, allowing his bones to crack. His brothers had already lost their ability to fight. If the king of Zhongyuan managed to break free from him, they would die immediately. Yi Changqing fought with all his might. With a boom, both of them fell to the ground at the same time and continued to roll on the ground. The two of them roared madly and angrily. They rolled around on the ground, throwing punches at each other. Suddenly, Yi Changqing's hand stabbed viciously into the prince of Zhongyuan's left eye, his only remaining eye. Both of the king of Zhongyuan's eyes were crippled. The king of Zhongyuan kept vomiting blood, and Yi Changqing was also vomiting blood. The bones in their bodies were cracking and breaking in many places. However, their forelegs were intertwined with each other, and neither of them allowed the other's leg to break free to attack. Their only remaining hand was frantically hitting the other's body. Meanwhile, the king of Zhongyuan's remaining hand had already turned into a bone club. Even his fingers and palm were gone. Every time he hit Yi Changqing, he felt more pain than Yi Changqing. "Give me back my brother's lives." Yi Changqing seemed to be unaware of pain. He was only left with the thought of attacking madly as he roared with all his might. "Give me back my brother's lives." The king of Zhongyuan also roared as he attacked with all his might. The king of Zhongyuan's yellow robe, which was obviously a treasure, was now riddled with holes. There were 30 to 40 spots on his body that were constantly spurting blood, revealing his white bones. The flesh on his neck was gone, and his cervical vertebrae were connected with cracking sounds. There were 5 or 6 slash marks on his scalp, and not a single strand of hair remained. There was a hole in his stomach, and half of his intestines were hanging out. His injuries were so severe that they could have been fatal. However, the king of Zhongyuan was attacking with all his might, completely ignoring his own injuries. It was true that Yi Changqing did not care about his own safety, but the king of Zhongyuan was even more despairing at this moment. Cheng Gaing staggered to his feet, roaring with all his might as he leaped forward. He grabbed the prince of Zhongyuan's intestines that were still on the ground and laughed bitterly. "Sure? You're still alive. Watch me. Avenge you." With a loud roar, he desperately tried to pull it out, and his body desperately retreated. With this pull, he really used up all his strength. He was already like a lamp that had run out of oil, but he still managed to pull a full 3 to 4 meters away. The king of Zhongyuan's screams instantly turned into ghostly wails and howls. He stopped attacking Yi Changqing. His bony left hand desperately held onto his intestines, and he allowed Yi Changqing to attack him, thought his intestines were straightened in midair by dust and gravel. Both of them were roaring with all their might. With a snap, his intestines broke. Cheng Gaing fell to the ground, holding half of his intestines. He put them in his mouth and chewed furiously. "Jun Typhoon, I'm going to eat you. I'm going to eat you. I'm going to eat you." Oh. On the other side, the king of Zhongyuan continued to howl miserably. Yi Changqing roared and continued to beat him up. Yu Jiaran staggered to her feet, raised her mountain and river sword, and slashed down fiercely. Wherever the sword light passed, the king of Zhongyuan's legs were separated from his body. The king of Zhongyuan howled miserably. Suddenly, yellow light flashed, and he flew up, crashing into Yu Jiaran's chest. Yu Jiaran screamed and flew backward, blood spurting out of her mouth. The king of Zhongyuan fell down fiercely. His broken thighs immediately stabbed into the ground, and he howled miserably again. Now, both of his hands were crippled. His right hand was like a smashed bamboo, broken into pieces. Only half of his left hand was left. Both of his legs were chopped off, and both of his eyes were blinded. Even his intestines were pulled 3 to 4 meters away by Cheng Gaing. After the last headbutt, he no longer had any attacking power. However, he was still shaking his head left and right, howling miserably, and shouting hoarsely, "Die! Die! All of you must die!" Yi Changqing, who had fought him for the longest in close combat, had more than half of his bones broken. He was gasping for his last breath. At the last moment, he used his lifetime's cultivation and his own body to lock down the king of Zhongyuan's explosion. Otherwise, 1 or 2 of Xingtian and the rest would have died. That was the king of Zhongyuan's last breath of origin energy. If he was not careful, it would be an extreme self-explosion, but it did not matter now. The king of Zhongyuan's last breath of origin energy had been exhausted. It was impossible for him to self-explode. Yu Jiaran and Cheng Gang slowly crawled towards the king of Zhongyuan on the ground. Their eyes were filled with extreme hatred. At this time, the two of them were also completely exhausted. They didn't have much strength left in their bodies. As they crawled, the bones in their bodies cracked. However, their gazes were steady. They relied on their willpower to persevere. They couldn't bear to see this bastard die in front of them. They couldn't accept it. They must kill him with their own hands. They must cut off his last breath. When Xingtian's legs were broken, but he was still crawling forward with his elbows. Lu Yichuan was unconscious on the ground. Qinshou, when Xingtian roared hoarsely, Qinshou, hang in there. Hang in there for me. This bastard is going to die in front of you. Shi Yunfeng, brother, watch from the heavens. We have avenged you. Avenged, when Xingtian murmured. Finally, he could not hold on any longer and fainted on the ground. Far below the stairs, Hua Qianshou was still twisting his neck to look over. His face was still filled with a cruel smile. However, there was no longer any light in his eyes. Above his mouth, a lit cigarette had already burned to the end. The ashes fell on his lips. He did not know when this man, who did not know how his descendants would evaluate him in his life, had completely stopped breathing. In the end, he was one step ahead of the king of Zhongyuan. Finally, Grandma Shi and Cheng Gang crawled to the front of the king of Zhongyuan. The two of them roared angrily and pounced forward, forgetting everything. The short sabers and broken swords in their hands ruthlessly stabbed into the king of Zhongyuan's body again and again. Pull it out. Stab it again. Pull out again. At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan could no longer resist. He groaned and cursed viciously on the brink of death, until Granny Shi bit his throat. With a snap, she crushed his laryngeal bone, broke his windpipe, and broke his blood vessels. The king of Zhongyuan finally lost his voice. But Cheng Gang and Yu Jiaran were still crazily stabbing, slashing, biting, tearing that rumble that the king of Zhongyuan's head rolled on the ground. Cheng Gang used the last bit of his strength to jump up and press the head under his body. He gasped for breath and stabbed the broken sword in his hand with all his strength. Xiao, Grandpa has avenged you. Yinfeng, Qinshou, brother has avenged you. Avenged? Ah! Cheng Gang raised his head and roared. Suddenly, he fainted because of exhaustion. On the other side, Yu Jiaran was still biting the king of Zhongyuan's body. Give me back Yinfeng. Give me back my husband. Give me back. Give me back. As she bit, big drops of tears fell down. Xiaoduo and Xiaoyan, who had been watching for a long time, couldn't help but shiver. They looked at each other and felt that their teeth were chattering. They were the two people who were in the best condition. Xiaoyan wasn't even seriously injured. She still had the strength to fight. However, what they saw in front of them was too exciting and shocking. It was far beyond their knowledge and experience. They didn't move for a long time and were stunned on the spot. There was such a terrible hatred in the world. The power of hatred was so great. In fact, if the two of them hadn't intervened in this battle, the result would have been reversed. As the king of Zhongyuan said, he would have killed all of Hua Qianshou's brothers in front of him. Finally, there was no more movement. From the beginning to the end, Enyang Guest and the Netherworld Assassin, who were in the air, had been watching this battle. They had seen the insufferably arrogant king of Zhongyuan die miserably. The Netherworld Assassin was trembling all over. He stared straight as if he was in a nightmare. His forehead was full of cold sweat. Let's go. Enyang Guest also felt that his body was full of cold sweat. Okay, I'll go to the Sun Moon Pass. The Netherworld Assassin was trembling all over. This cruel scene made this experienced Jianghu man, who had killed countless people, have a subtle feeling of being scared out of his wits. Okay, the two of them disappeared while trembling. In the void, there were a few people who had been watching quietly from the beginning to the end. Why didn't they do anything? Isn't the price they paid a bit too tragic? We can't do anything. Yudong Tian took a deep breath. This is their revenge. If we do something, We won't let them vent their anger. That boy and girl, they are their students. It's natural for them to avenge their teacher. If they couldn't win, we would have intervened. But since they exhausted June Typhoon, we don't have to do anything. This is what they deserve, what they deserve. Understood. The other person sighed softly. The descendants of the Imperial War God are gone. Just like that. Marshal Sheeman looked down bitterly. The request of his old brother was still ringing in his ears. Now he had to watch his son being killed by a group of people in the most cruel way. Can you commit crimes as you wish after gaining merits? Yu Dongtian glared at him. If I have a son, can I kill all of you? Continue to live a carefree life? Chapter 775. Merits and demerits. When it doesn't involve principles, there can be friendship. But when it involves fundamental problems, merits and demerits can't be mixed together. Yu Dongtian said coldly. Besides, the king of the Central Plains, June Typhoon, should have died long ago. If it weren't for his father, if it weren't for those people in the West Army, he would have been cut into pieces long ago. Yes. Marshal Sheeman lowered his head. If anyone in your army dares to take revenge on these people, I'll kill them too. Yu Dongtian looked at Marshal Sheeman and said, Let me tell you, I won't sympathize with their brotherhood. I promise I won't. I hope not. The heavenly king of the right snorted and said in a low voice, Sheeman, let me tell you, the minister is right next door to this villa. He saw the whole thing with his own eyes. After you go back, if your old subordinates really do anything, I think you know what the consequences will be. Marshal Sheeman trembled and broke out in a cold sweat. Absolutely not. I promise with my life. If anyone dares to do anything, I'll deal with them first. That a cold wind blew. On the ground, a few people were lying on the ground in a mess. So Xiaoduo and Zhuxiaoyan, who finally came to their senses, hurriedly flew down to check on their injuries. With one look, the two of them were horrified. Every one of these people was seriously injured to the extreme, even to the extent of hindering their Taoist foundations. However, as long as they were treated in time, their lives would not be in danger. They quickly gave each of them a bottle of the best spiritual water and fed them all kinds of healing elixirs. Xiaoduo rushed into the room and carried out a few mattresses. He put these people on them and then started to treat their injuries slowly. He didn't move them in because Xiaoduo knew they wouldn't want to. Although it was cold outside and the smell of blood was even worse, they still had a brother here, and they hadn't sent him away yet. At this time, they wouldn't only care about their own injuries. They wouldn't only care about their own safety. As expected, Da Yi Changqing was the first to wake up. He murmured, Is June Typhoon dead? Dead. He was killed by you all. You have taken your revenge. Zhuxiaoduo nodded vigorously. Yi Changqing's eyes lit up, and he suddenly began to struggle. Qinsho. Brother, where's my brother? He struggled to look for him. When Xing Tian and Lu Yichuan also woke up at the same time. When Xing Tian anxiously and hoarsely called out, Qinsho, are you still there? Qinsho. June Typhoon was dead. Did you see it? But no one answered. After a long while, the six of them struggled and begged Xiaoduo to help them sit up. They sat side by side in front of Hua Qinsho. Looking at the motionless Hua Qinsho, they couldn't help but sob and cry. Hua Qinsho was already dead. His corpse had already begun to stiffen, but that strange and vicious smile still remained on his face. Qinsho, when Xing Tian and the others cried bitterly, choking with sobs. My brother, Yi Changqing roared, spat out a mouthful of blood, and fainted. He thought that after leaving the army, they would not lose each other again, but he never expected that they would still leave one after another. Qinsho. Cheng Gying stroked Hua Qinsho's face, tears streaming down his face. Don't go. There are only a few of us left in this world. Don't go. Cheng Gying burst into tears. He had taken his revenge. However, his brother was no longer around. Today, he had taken his revenge. Only his brother would never come again. A figure flashed. Marshal Sheeman appeared in front of them. You guys need to hurry up and treat your injuries. You can't be a group of dragons without a leader. Since you have already taken your revenge, you still have to shoulder the responsibilities that you should shoulder. Marshal Sheeman said, "Don't think that you only have brothers. You still have so many students." "Yes, I'll take you to heal. There's a super nourishment chamber for you, to rest in for a night. Heavenly King has also given you elixirs. Here, I'll send someone to set up a morning hall for Hua Qinsho. When you're better, come back and send him off." "Thank you, Marshal." Lu Ichuan choked with sobs and said, "Marshal, please get a good coffin for my brother first. We can't move now, so we can only ask for your help. We want to use his real name to bury him." "No problem." "Marshal," Cheng Gying said, "I beg you to leave Jun Taifeng's head behind." Marshal Sheeman was silent for a long time. Finally, he slowly nodded. "All right, but after you've paid your respects to the dead, I'll send someone to get it. The descendant of the god of war was killed by you just like that, even if he deserved it, as his father's brother. I don't feel good." "We understand Grand Marshal's difficulties." When Xing Tian said, "Thank you for your understanding, Marshal," they truly understood because they also had brothers. They were brothers to each other. Moreover, there was another brother lying on the ground near them, and this brother of mine is lying here because he wants to avenge us. So they completely understood Marshal Sheeman's mentality of letting his brother down. They were brothers of life and death. But Marshal Sheeman and Jun Taifeng's father were also brothers who entrusted their lives to each other. "Let's go." Marshal Sheeman waved his hand, and a dozen people came down from the sky. A few of them lifted the mattress and flew away, while the others stayed behind to clean up the mess. "You two quickly go back and heal your wounds." Marshal Sheeman looked at Zhua Xiaoduo and Zhua Xiaoyan and said in a gentle but low voice, "The martial world is so cruel. Quickly improve yourselves and prepare to enter the secret territory." "Yes." Zhua Xiaoduo and Zhua Xiaoyan stuck out their tongues and quickly ran away. Even when he returned home, he was still shaken by the cruelty of today's battle and trembled incessantly. So a real battle is so cruel. Before this, it was really hard to imagine. In Yi Changqing's courtyard, "Marshal, how do we report the news of Jun Taifeng's death?" Jun Taifeng's rebellion was exposed, and he committed suicide to escape punishment. Marshal Sheeman sighed and said, "Report it to His Majesty, and ask His Majesty to give him a posthumous title for the sake of his father's face. As for the aftermath, our Western army will take care of it. My old brothers from back then, I'm afraid they will complain." "Complain? They dare to complain?" Marshal Sheeman said angrily. "I was there personally, and I didn't dare to say a word. If they have the ability, go find the Heavenly King or the Minister. All of them have bad tempers. Tell them, if they don't teach their descendants well, in the future, they will end up like Jun Taifeng, or even worse. Whoever dares to complain, I don't need anyone else. I will beat him to death." The wind howled in the air. Marshal Dongfang led his men and rushed over as if his life depended on it. "I heard that the king of Zhongyuan wants to make things difficult for the retired veterans of our Eastern Army. How did he offend the king of Zhongyuan?" Marshal Dongfang's voice carried a strong smell of gunpowder. "Damn it. I was too embarrassed to kill him last time, but I gave him face. Where is he?" Marshal Sheeman's nose and eyes didn't look like eyes. He said, "Jun Taifeng was already killed by your men. What else do you want? Grind his bones and scatter his ashes? Killed by my men?" Marshal Dongfang froze for a moment, and then said, "What about Yi Changqing and the others? They went to heal their wounds, and none of them died." Marshal Sheeman felt somewhat suffocated. "So that's how it is, haha." Marshal Dongfang laughed. "Then it's fine, let's withdraw. Sheeman, you have worked hard today. I will treat you to a drink some other day, and we will talk about it then." With a whoosh, Marshal Dongfang flew away with a large group of people. He didn't even arrive at the scene, and flew away faster than when he arrived. He knew very well that he had lost his momentum, and it was Marshal Sheeman who was suppressing his anger. If Marshal Sheeman really wanted to beat him up, it wouldn't be worth it, and he wouldn't be able to reason with him. All of you are so protective of your children. Sooner or later, Something will happen. Marshal Sheeman gritted his teeth and cursed. After a while, he came to his senses. Damn, the Hidden Dragon High School's matter should be handled by the East Army, right? You guys are from the East Army. You guys ran away so fast. Old cunning fellow, when we meet next time, I will beat you to death. After Zhuo and Xiaonian returned, they hurriedly went into the Void Extermination Tower to heal their wounds. Their injuries were very limited, and Zhuo only suffered some minor internal injuries, but they quickly recovered. In the morning, Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding said goodbye to their children and embarked on their return journey. You two must be well. Wu Yuding hugged her son and daughter. We will call you and send you a video. Okay. Zhuo and Zhuo Xiaonian were still worried, but their faces were very relaxed. Dad, Mom, you will come back safely. We will wait for you. Let's go. Dad, Mom, Dad, goodbye. Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding got into the car. The Gao family was already waiting for them in a luxury car. The couple got into the car and drove out of Fenghai City. They did not say a word for a long time. Xiao Xiaonian, Wu Yuding finally said in a low mood, I am still worried. What else is there to be worried about? I told you everything clearly. Zhuo Chonglu had to be relaxed. Our children and grandchildren have their own lives. Don't worry too much about them. What do you know? You don't care about our children at all. How can you be a father like this? Wu Yuding was angry. Zhuo Zhonglu had successfully turned his wife's concern for their children into anger at him. That's how it works. I will bite you to death. They quarreled all the way and went further and further away to Zhuo Xiaonian watched their parents leave. Their hearts were heavy. They were not in the mood to practice, talk, eat, or drink. They went into the dimension-destroying tower and sat back to back on the grass. Both of them were in a daze. They were in a daze for a long time. They sighed repeatedly. Even Zhuo, who liked to mess around and take advantage of others, was quiet. He did not tease with Xiaonian for a long time. Chapter 776. Are you okay? You should be okay, right? Zhuo nagged, as if he was addicted to it. I'm sure you're okay. Absolutely okay. Zhuo Xiaonian leaned on Zhuo's back and said softly, Nian cat. It's uncomfortable leaning on my back. Let's stand chest to chest. Little doggy Zhuo, let's fight. Zhuo Xiaonian was furious. She leaped up with a long sword in her hand. Other than taking advantage of me, little doggy Zhuo has no other thoughts. I have to beat him up. The loser has to do the cat-tail dance. Okay. Zhuo was full of confidence. He activated the Flaming Sun Sutra to the maximum and danced happily. Cat ear dance. Twist your waist. Zhuo shouted loudly. Hence that Zhuo rushed forward excitedly and expectantly. Zhuo was brutally beaten up. Zhuo was so depressed that he died. Zhuo was brutally whipped. He rolled on the ground after being kicked. If you hit me again, I'll take off my pants. Hence, Zhuo, who was beaten to the ground, started to act like a hooligan. He grabbed his belt with both hands and threatened her seriously. His eyes were full of eagerness as if he would show her his, but if she didn't agree with him. And from the looks of it, he would show her his pants even if she didn't agree with him. Shameless. Zhuo Xiaonian's face was flushed red. She immediately retreated. Based on her understanding of little doggy Zhuo, he was really capable of doing that, and he was looking forward to it. After being beaten up as usual, the two of them started to cultivate actively. Pieces of top-grade jade of astral souls quickly turned into powder in their hands. The spiritual energy in the Tower of Void Destruction was getting stronger and stronger. As Xiaoduo started to compress his spiritual energy again, enduring the intense pain. Every time he did this, as long as Zhuo Xiaonian was beside him, Zhuo Xiaoduo would not make a sound. If Zhuo Xiaonian wasn't here, Zhuo Xiaoduo would scream himself hoarse. However, with Zhuo Xiaonian here, Zhuo Xiaoduo wouldn't make a single sound. This was a matter of a man's pride. Do you know what a man's pride is? I can't let Nian think that her man is a weakling who can't even bear a little pain. A man has to be tough. Tough as in tough. I could take off my pants without a word, but I can't be stubborn. Xiaoduo was determined. In his dantian, the sledgehammer danced. Clang, 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 clang. It's the 25th time. After the compression, he stood up and hammered wildly. When Zhuxianyan was done with her cultivation, Xiaoduo, who thought that his cultivation had improved a lot, once again proposed a bet with the cat's ears. Then, he was taught a lesson again, beaten up until he fell to the ground. He threatened to take off his pants again and regain the upper hand, however. After the two of them cultivated, their activities, their dispersal, and their familiarization were all completed in this strange atmosphere. Then, they started a new round of cultivation. In other words, their cultivation process started when Xiaoduo started to make a fool of himself again, when Zhuxianyan angrily taught him a lesson, and when someone was beaten to the ground, they started to cultivate again. It was a cycle that went back and forth. They spent a total of 12 days in the Tower of Void Destruction. Xiaoduo succeeded in compressing his spiritual energy to 28 times. He vaguely felt that he had reached his limit. He was only half an inch away from being full. It seemed that he could not compress his spiritual energy for another 29 or 30 times. Xiaoduo was very dissatisfied with this result. He could not achieve his goal. Of course, he would not be happy or satisfied. He was so angry that he wanted to take off his pants. In a fit of anger, he took out a few pieces of supreme gray jade of astral souls and started to cultivate again. Xiaoduo thought for a while and decided to drag the heart of the sun over and put it near him to assist in his cultivation. He absorbed the heart of the sun from the void with his left hand and the supreme gray jade of astral souls with his right hand. In an instant, abundant spiritual energy rushed into his meridians with an unprecedented momentum. Xiaoduo was unmoved. He continued to absorb. The pure spiritual energy from the supreme gray jade of astral souls and the extremely fierce yang qi from the heart of the sun rushed to the bottom of his dantian and formed a whirlpool. The spiritual energy in his entire body boiled like a flash flood. Xiaoduo had predicted this. He immediately diverted his attention to compress his spiritual energy. He continued to absorb as he did so. With this unprecedented assistance, he finally managed to suppress his spiritual energy 2 more times. His spiritual energy had reached a point where it would explode if he did not achieve a breakthrough. He raised his head and drank the 9 heavens spiritual spring liquid. 1 drop. An extremely cool and refreshing feeling quickly spread throughout his meridians and bones from the moment it entered his mouth. With a muffled sound, the clothes on Xiaoduo's body exploded due to the sudden burst of qi energy. In an instant, he was naked and clean. He had finally achieved his goal of taking off his pants. The cool and refreshing air continued to flow through every meridian and every corner of his body. Wherever the cool and refreshing air passed, the pores on his skin would emit a stream of spiritual energy of different colors. Most of the spiritual energy was gray in color, completely different from the ordinary spiritual energy. As the cool feeling circulated, Xiaoduo's body was like a fountain. The gray hue of spiritual energy spurted out continuously. There were a total of 36,000 streams, but in an instant, hundreds of streams converged into the sea. The cool feeling flowed into his dantian. The boiling spiritual energy calmed down instantly after it came into contact with the cool feeling. It even showed signs of being suppressed. The cool feeling enveloped all the spiritual energy in his dantian. Then it slowly seeped in and squeezed. More and more gray spiritual energy was squeezed out. It flowed through his meridians and pores and was expelled from his body bit by bit. After exactly half an hour, Xiaoduo circulated his spiritual energy. After 1 cycle, he could clearly feel that his spiritual energy had undergone a fundamental change. The purity of his vital essence had reached an unimaginable level. With a single thought, his spiritual energy flowed through his body naturally. It was smooth and comfortable. Compared to before, the change was obvious. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. He checked the total amount again. Fortunately, it's only less than 10%. So Xiaoduo had a rough idea. He had only been cultivating for a short period of time. Although he had used external forces to improve his cultivation, it was mostly with the help of the jade of astral souls, dragon blood flying dagger, and so on. Therefore, the amount of vital essence he had cultivated was still considered pure. Previously, he would compress his vital essence in every realm, which would also make his vital essence pure. It could be said that there were very few impurities in it. Most of the impurities that were squeezed out by the nine heavens spiritual spring liquid came from the spiritual energy in the jade of astral souls. As for the other impurities, he dare not say that there were none, but there really weren't many. I have to replenish it quickly. Zhuo Xiaoduo saw that the vital essence in his dantian, which was close to boiling, had calmed down and was completely compressed. It only took up half of the total amount in his dantian. So Xiaoduo did some calculations and realized that he had done something wrong. Damn, I can still suppress it at least 10 more times. I have to start cultivating quickly. I don't care anymore. I'll just use the best quality jade of astral souls, the heart of the sun, and the dragon blood flying dagger. I have to complete the process of filling my vital essence as soon as possible. Otherwise, I might not be able to make it in time. So Xiaoduo was about to cultivate when he suddenly realized that he was naked. He looked at Zhuo Xiaoyan, who was cultivating and had yet to wake up. He hurriedly tidied himself up and put on his clothes. It's not that I care about my pure body. I don't care if she sees me naked. In fact, I'm very happy to let Nian Yin see me naked. However, the important thing is that I can't let Nian Yin know that my clothes will explode after consuming the nine heaven spiritual spring liquid. I'm waiting for her to consume the nine heaven spiritual spring liquid. When that time comes, I'll open my eyes wide and watch carefully. When she consumes the nine heaven spiritual spring liquid, the moment she consumes it, her clothes will explode. Wow. I'm looking forward to it. Xiaoduo was drooling. He felt that the flaming sun sutra below him was automatically activated. For a moment, his second brother was about to soar into the sky like a dragon riding on the clouds. Calm down. Second brother, calm down. Calm down. Zhuo Xiaoduo gently pressed a certain brother down and used his thighs to clamp him down, comforting him. Now is not the time. Just bear with it a little longer. Bear with it a little longer. Don't worry. This little brother will never let you down. One day, I'll let you have your fill. After comforting him for a long time, his second brother finally stopped transforming and returned to his original form. Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan fought more than 10 rounds in the space-destroying pagoda before they finally came out. His parents weren't around, and Swollen wasn't around either. This fellow had been cultivating with Xiang Bing every day. He didn't know how he was progressing. Next door, a funeral was being held. Yi Chongqing and the others looked like they had just recovered from serious illness. They still couldn't walk properly, but they were holding a grand funeral. Hua Qinshu. This was the first time that this name had entered everyone's attention. Yi Chongqing and the others didn't explain much. They just said that their brother had passed away in an accident a few days ago, and they were here to send him off. Everyone was dressed in white, mournfully sending off their brother. Only Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan were witnesses at the scene and had participated in the battle. When Xingtian found an opportunity to tell the two of them everything. When Xingtian's original intention was to use his private channels to spread the news. Hua Qinshu had taken revenge for his brothers. Although his methods were too extreme, too vicious, and too extreme, his feelings for his brothers were truly indescribable. In order to avenge his brothers, he gave up everything and gave up everything. He didn't inform anyone. He became the person directly involved in the destruction of the prince of the Zhongyuan's residence with his own strength. In the end, the prince of the Zhongyuan, who was renowned throughout the world, lost his family and descendants, and even died an unnatural death. When Xingtian felt that such a brother, no matter what he did, was the pride of his life to have such a brother, no matter how bad he was, no matter how he usually behaved. but I have such a brother. I'm proud to have such a brother. I can die without regrets. Let's not talk about Hua Qinshuo's character. I just want to ask, in this world, who wouldn't want such a friend and brother? Chapter 777. Zhuo Xiao's shock was no less than when Xingtian's. As a man, he was at the most hot-blooded young age. He could not resist such brotherhood. The two of them offered incense respectfully. All the male descendants of the Xiang family, the Liu family, and the Cheng family joined the ranks of his relatives and friends. They wore mourning clothes and sent him off. Zhuo Xiaoduo was filled with emotions. After he came back, under Zhuo Xiaoyan's watch and polishing, he wrote down the entire incident in detail. Then, he sent it to Zhuo Shuai's company. Zhuo Shuai's company was working hard to produce a TV series and movie related to Shi Yinfeng. They were already in the post-production stage, and it was said that they would be released soon. That after receiving the latest news from their boss, they attached great importance to it. Of course, the main reason was that this incident was too sensitive. They exposed it through a grapevine, which was even more eye-catching and fascinating. Zhuo Shuai's company quickly worked on this incident. In the afternoon, they published an article titled "Shocking. The King of the Central Plains, whose name shook the world and power overturned the imperial court, fell just like that. Come and hit me if I don't shock you so much that your eyeballs will pop out." 1. Was freshly published and entered the public's view. This was just the beginning, but the suspense and hooks in it were enough to write a 7-million-word novel. There were even people in Zhuo Shuai's company who strongly suggested that they use the highest price to invite the most handsome, most cultured, most elegant, most cultured, and most cultured author with the surname Feng to write this story. For this, they would not hesitate to pay 10 billion yuan. Of course, in order to keep it a secret, the author's name was Feng Ling the World. This matter was still under discussion, a secret discussion that in an extremely short period of time, there was already a huge uproar on the internet. The main reason was that there were too many people in the outside world who did not know about the destruction of the King of the Central Plains. Many people were surprised when they saw it. The King of the Central Plains fell. They instinctively clicked on it. In a short period of time, a snowball was rolling on the internet, and the snowball was getting bigger and bigger. So, the King of the Central Plains is this kind of person. So, the King of the Central Plains did so many bad things. So, this is the truth. Damn, I really didn't expect this. I'm really shocked. Shocking. My eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. My lungs are about to explode. My balls are about to explode. In an instant, my 300 million descendants exploded. Editor, you're too awesome. You even know about these private matters. I'm on my knees. My entire body is about to explode. However, Zhuo Xiaoduo did not care about these matters after he had explained the initial direction of the discussion. He focused on entering the Tower of Annihilation to practice. On the school field, Li Chenglong was sweating profusely as he cultivated with Meng Zhongjun and the rest of the younger generation of the Gao family. He also wanted to break through to the nascent soul transformation stage in his most perfect state. Meng Zhongjun, Hao Han, and the others also wanted to have more combat experience and accumulate more spiritual qi. As for Li Chenglong's request to spar, they naturally hit it off and were happy to see it happen. As for the 9 Heaven Spiritual Spring, Zhuo Xiaoduo did not give it to Li Chenglong. Because if Li Chenglong took it now, he might not be able to make it in time for this operation. Also, at the current stage, at least in Zhuo Xiaoduo's opinion, it was not the best time for Li Chenglong to take it. It would be better to take it when he broke through to the cloud transformation stage. The effect would be better and more obvious. He believed that by that time, the brothers would have broken in to a certain extent and could bring Swollen Boy to the Tower of Annihilation to practice at ease, so that his foundation would be more stable. That as for now, Zhuo Xiaoduo would not take the risk even if father and mother's did not say anything. It wasn't that Li Chenglong wasn't loyal enough, but rather, Li Chenglong's cultivation base, wisdom, composure, and experience in dealing with people weren't at the level where he could share such a shocking secret. The whole environment and atmosphere of the Hidden Dragon High School was to give it their all, using battle as a substitute for training to cultivate to the extreme and improve to the extreme. After Hua Qianshou's funeral, with Xiang Quangren leading the team and 10 teachers accompanying him, the 2,500 people of the Hidden Dragon High School set off. On that day, the parents sent them off all the way to the outskirts of Fenghai City. It's only 3 months. We'll be back soon. Whether it was the students or the parents, they were reassured by this. The spring festival was coming and the weather was freezing. The border would only be even colder. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for a war to break out in such a season. In the past hundreds and thousands of years, or even longer, it was always like this. The children were only there to gain experience and feel the atmosphere of the battlefield at the border. Although the Sky Surveyor throne had just issued the order for war, no one thought in the worst direction at all. In a season where even a piss could produce a popsicle. What was the point of fighting? Even Xiang Quangren and the teachers leading the team had such thoughts. After they sent the people off, they had to return immediately. After all, there had been too many similar experiences before. The reason why Xiang Quangren went was because he had been troubled by the strange phenomenon before and had not been to the front line for too long. He planned to use this trip to find his old brothers and talk about the old days, as well as to make a name for Qianshou. When he was in the army, all of you looked down on him, beating and scolding him every day. How about now? That's how my brother treats all of us. I'm so proud to have such a brother. Having such a brother, not only is my life not a waste, I can boast about it for 3 lifetimes. Are you envious? Are you jealous? The team set off in a meandering manner, accompanied by cheers and laughter, gradually going further and further away. Xiaoduo was sweating profusely in the dimension-destroying pagoda, trying his best to fight with Xiaoyan. Although he was repeatedly suppressed, knocked down, beaten black and blue, and swollen all over, however, he could also feel that his foundation was becoming more and more solid. He had entered Dao too late. Compared to his peers, there was a considerable gap. With Xiaoyan's current cultivation level, she could firmly suppress Xiaoduo and could be said to have an overwhelming advantage. Because of this, she could be like a sledgehammer, pounding Xiaoduo hard, making his foundation even more solid. Xiaoduo, for the sake of the erotic benefits after his victory, gave his all in every battle, hysterical. Cat ear dance. With a roar of excitement, he hammered his hammer continuously. Cat tail dance. Hammer, hammer, hammer. Cat belly dance. Cat pole dance. Cat. Before the last cat dance could be called out, he was already knocked down to the ground by the exasperated Xiaoyan, and then beaten up again. This little bastard only wants to humiliate me. Can't he think of something else? Finally, after countless battles, Xiaoduo, who had once again sucked dry the dragon blood flying dagger and consumed 50 pieces of supreme grade astral soul's jade, could no longer suppress the abundant spiritual energy that was once again surging to the peak. The heart of the scorching sun seemed to be as hot as before, but Xiaoduo could clearly feel that the heat it was emitting was far less than before. He did not know if it was because the energy contained in the heart of the scorching sun had been greatly depleted, or because he had become stronger. Xiaoduo sat cross-legged in the Tower of Annihilation. He could feel the vortex in his dantian spinning rapidly. It was spinning so fast that even he could not keep track of it. It was extremely fast. As it continued to spin, a small, hair-like substance was slowly forming in the center of his energy center. The moment it took shape, Xiaoduo's body shook, and a stream of black blood spurted out of his nostrils. One of his meridians was suddenly connected, and spiritual energy surged like a torrential tide. In an instant, the spinning in his energy center became 10 times faster. That hair-like, fiery red object was slowly growing in size while madly devouring spiritual energy. Xiaoduo suddenly had an urge to eat. Cotton candy. I really want to eat it. Isn't cotton candy like this? First, it starts to spin bit by bit, and as it spins and spins, it wraps itself around the target bit by bit until it forms a big, furry ball. A big, furry ball. A big, furry ball. Isn't that my second brother? As he thought about it, Xiaoduo almost laughed out loud. Xiaoduo was at the critical moment of his breakthrough, and Xiaoyan was naturally fully focused on protecting him. At this moment, she saw that guy's face had a joyful and wretched smile after his breakthrough. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that breaking through to the nascent soul gives one such happy feeling? Why didn't I feel anything when I broke through? At that time, I only felt nervous and expectant. Xiaoyan looked at the smile on Xiaoduo's face, and her heart was filled with doubts. The more she looked at that smile, the more it didn't seem like a good thing. Instead, it seemed like Dog had set a trap for me and wanted to take advantage of me, and he had already succeeded in doing so. This guy, is he still thinking about bad things at such a serious time? Xiaoyan suddenly felt a surge of anger filling her heart. This bastard, he must be humiliating me in his heart. She had to admit that Xiaoyan's understanding of Xiaoduo was already at the level of a master. Even the slightest change in his expression could be observed and accurately grasped. This was the way her mother taught her how to control her husband. It was an absolute treasure. Nianer, you're simple-minded, and you definitely won't be a match for Dog in the future. But as long as you can grasp this point, it's enough to deal with most situations. Mom, what point is it? Please enlighten me. Expression, eyes. Mood, expression, thoughts, and eyes. You just need to study the expression on his face. That's enough. When you've studied it thoroughly, no matter how scheming he is, it has nothing to do with you. Mom, why is that? Silly girl. Do you know who a man tells the most lies in his life? Who? You're so silly. In a man's life, the person he deceives the most is his own wife. In a man's life, most of the words he tells his wife are lies. Men are big liars in their bones. But as long as you grasp the changes in his expression, you can tell at a glance when he's lying. When you're in a good mood, you can ignore it, pretend not to know, or even pretend to believe him and act with him. But don't forget to keep it in your heart as a bomb. If you're in a bad mood, just dig it out for him. Just casually dig it out once or twice, and you'll be able to suppress his arrogance. Naturally, he'll be at your mercy. Also, when he's in a bad mood, or when he's quarreling with you. Men are all animals with a strong sense of self-existence. Once they feel that their status is dropping, they'll often use quarrels to raise their sense of existence and authority in the family. If you're cursed by him, his status can rise for a while. But at this time, as long as you don't show mercy, when he's at his most arrogant, throw out 7 or 8 lies at once. You can completely smash him down. In an instant, his status will be suppressed again. At this time, never. You mustn't be soft-hearted. We should chase after the cornered enemy with courage. You can't give in even if you give in. You have to give in completely before you can withdraw your troops. Xiaoduo is the same as your father. They're both the type who'll lie as soon as they're moved. When they're lying, their expressions won't change, and their hearts won't beat faster. They're the type who's the most difficult to distinguish. But you just have to pay attention. When you're facing this type of man, carefully observe his state before he speaks. Because when he wants to do something, his face will still have a special micro-expression. Then he'll often ponder for a while and come up with a draft in his heart. Because Xiaoduo will inevitably do it in one go. His lies will be more convincing than the truth. Remember, as long as he seems to be thinking about something important in front of you, that's when he's about to start lying. If one day, Xiaoduo swears to you something that you think is incomparably certain, don't believe him. He must be lying. I'll remember, Mom. Thank you for your guidance. I've learned a lot from your words of wisdom. Today is my nephew's wedding. I'm the witness. I forgot. Cough. I rushed back to my hometown and was scolded badly. Fortunately, I made it in time. Otherwise, I'd be finished. Chapter 778. At this moment, Xiaoyan looked at the wretched smile on Xiaoduo's face and couldn't help but think of her mother's pure teachings. Naturally, She recalled every expression and every detail of Zhuo Xiaoduo's. She had to admit that. When she thought about it, it seemed that every time her dog had an ulterior motive, he would carefully consider it first. Humph! Zhuo Xiaoyan's face was full of a rare smile. It was a smile of confidence that victory was in her hands. Dog, you're going to be unlucky in the future. I don't know how many times you'll fall into my hands. I'll give you a nickname early, Braid Brother. So Xiaoduo, who was in the middle of cultivation, didn't know that his mother had completely sold him out. So Xiaoyan really knew what he was thinking. It was difficult for him to turn the tables in this life. He was now using all his strength to stimulate the Qi whirlpool in his Dantian, making the fiery red thing become bigger bit by bit. He had consulted many people about this breakthrough before, including when Xing Tian, Zhuo Xiaoyan, Yi Chongqing, and so on. At this time, he was urging his Qi whirlpool to materialize more of his Qi. In other words, the nascent soul stage was bigger. When Xing Tian had a very clear explanation about this. The nascent soul stage was like a woman getting pregnant. At the beginning, it was only a little dot, but this dot was related to how big it would be when it was finally born. According to one Xing Tian, some people were like sesame seeds at the beginning, and when they were finally born, they weighed 3 to 4 kilograms. Some people were like soybeans, and when they were born, they weighed 8 to 9 kilograms. When they were born, they were so weak that they didn't even have the strength to breathe on their own. However, those who weighed 8 to 9 kilograms were very strong when they were born. They could even feel pain when they grabbed people's hands. Think about it. How could it be the same? It had to be said that when Xing Tian's analogy was very vivid. But recently, when Zhuo Xiaoduo asked his mother about this issue and told her when Xing Tian's argument, Wu Yuding scolded him. Your teacher Wen's theory is correct, but there are many fallacies in using a pregnant woman as an example. At least, his understanding of a pregnant woman is a pile of dog shit. So Xiaoduo didn't care whether it was bullshit or not. When Xing Tian had been single for thousands of years, how would he know what pregnancy was? Not to mention a man. Right now, he only knew that his Dantian was in the process of forming a nascent soul. It had to be big and strong. The initial size of a soybean is my minimum goal. Peanuts were just ordinary targets. If it could be like a grape, or a small apple, or even a big pomelo, or even a big watermelon, that I could do anything. It was completely possible. In short, the bigger the better. It would be beneficial to the good. It would be delightful if it was huge. With such thoughts in mind, Zhuo Xiaoduo tried his best to condense the Qi vortex. Traces of the scorching power of the flaming sun sutra spiraled and slowly attached to the fiery red object above Zhuo Xiaoduo's head. White fog gradually rose, and a human figure gradually took shape. It was the image of Zhuo Xiaoduo that had been shrunk countless times. As Zhuo Xiaoduo's spirit energy circulated more and more rapidly, the white fog became thicker and thicker. The figure of the little person also became clearer and clearer. In the end, it almost condensed into a solid form. The entire formation process lasted for a full 20 minutes. Zhuo Xiaoyan stared in shock at the pink little Zhuo Xiaoduo on top of Zhuo Xiaoduo's head just a little bit. She really wanted to touch it, suddenly. She remembered that when Xiaoduo was not even a year old, she was lying on the bed looking at this little thing crawling around naked. At that time, Zhuo Xiaoyan was still young. She touched here and there. In the end, she grabbed a caterpillar-like thing and played with it. Zhuo Xiaoduo cried, and Wu Yuding rushed in. Her eyes were full of anger and amusement. Zhuo Xiaoyan didn't know why, but she remembered this scene now. Her cold face suddenly turned red. She spat and said, Hooligan Xiaoduo. After a while, with a soft whoosh, the white fog above Xiaoduo's head quickly returned to his body. Then, a majestic aura spread out from Zhuo Xiaoduo's body. Nascent soul transformation. He had finally succeeded. In the eyes of ordinary people, nascent soul transformation was the so-called Great Grandmaster cultivation. In the year when Zhuo Xiaoduo had just turned 18, he had achieved it. Nascent soul transformation Great Grandmaster. At this moment, Zhuo Xiaoyan felt the majestic aura that suddenly burst out from Zhuo Xiaoduo's body. She was even happier than Zhuo Xiaoduo. Her eyes were red. Duo, nascent soul transformation. Boo-hoo. Zhuo Xiaoyan was so happy that she wiped away her tears. At this moment, the figure of the youth who couldn't cultivate in the past, who tormented her to the point of half-death every day, suddenly rushed into her mind, the figure of the young man who risked his life for her when he just started cultivating and didn't hesitate to change his fate. Rushed into her mind, Zhuo Xiaoyan pouted and sobbed. At this moment, she felt joy, touched, and happy. It was indescribable and indescribable. But she just wanted to cry. After a long time. Zhuo Xiaoduo withdrew all his aura. At this moment, he felt that his sea of consciousness and spiritual sense had more than doubled. At the moment of the breakthrough, it was as if his whole life had been sublimated. Even his eyesight seemed to have improved a lot. He could clearly feel that he had broken through to a higher level. But when it came to what level he had broken through and what kind of enlightenment he had gained, it was a little vague. He hurriedly looked inside himself to see what was going on. He saw that in his dantian there was a Shao sun that was the size of a soybean. It was shining brightly in the air, as if it was swallowing and spitting out countless flames. Its whole body was red, and heat was constantly spewing out from within. When he looked at it with his divine sense, he actually felt a stinging pain in his eyes. Size so small. Zhuo Xiaoduo was a little dissatisfied. He had already used all his strength and effort. After compressing his own vital essence for nearly 40 times, he had directly used the heart of the sun and the supreme gray jade of astral souls to promote it. In the end, it was only the size of soybean. Where were the peanuts, grapes, apples, pomelos, and watermelons of his dreams that for a moment he couldn't help but feel depressed? He sighed subconsciously. When he opened his eyes, he saw Zhuo Xiaoyan looking at him with tears in her eyes. What's wrong? Why are you crying? Zhuo Xiaoduo was confused. What's wrong? No one can bully you in the Tower of Annihilation. Duo. Zhuo Xiaoyan sobbed. She looked like a wronged little girl. You've broken through. Zhuo Xiaoduo said yes. Why are you crying for such a good thing? Zhuo Xiaoyan hummed and pouted. I'm happy to cry. It's none of your business. Suddenly, a surge of joy surged in her heart. She couldn't help but laugh. Then, she pouted again, but couldn't keep a straight face. She said angrily, Can I? He. Finally, she couldn't hold back the joy in her heart. She laughed again. She smiled with tears in her eyes. The tears of joy matched her small face that was like a blooming spring flower. On the other hand, she was annoyed that she didn't hold it in. She stomped her little feet bitterly. The expression on her face at this moment was really indescribable and wonderful. Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. Wow, this crying and laughing beauty is my wife. He couldn't help but rush forward and hug her. He lowered his head. Nian cat. To save money, I'll omit 2,000 words. After a long time, the two of them sat side by side on the grass of the Tower of Annihilation. Zhuo Xiaoyan blushed and kept tidying her clothes. She pouted her slightly red and swollen lips. She snorted and threw a tantrum. She didn't even dare to look at Zhuo Xiaoduo. She hummed and said, Duo, you've gone too far. I'll tell Mother tomorrow and let her punish you. Kill you. Tell her. Go ahead and tell her. Zhuo Xiaoduo crossed his legs and swayed. Occasionally, he put his right hand in front of his nose and sniffed. He looked relaxed and happy. He said happily, I'll admit that I'm killed by our mother, but I guess she won't. After all, I'm her only son. If she really kills me, she won't have a son or a son-in-law. Then I'll tell father, I'm our father's only son. He won't bear to kill me. Zhuo Xiaoduo swayed his legs and said proudly, if they create a second account or something, I might have some scruples. But now, I'm the only one with a main account. The only one. She can only tap my fingers. It won't hurt or itch. As she spoke, she imitated Wu Yuding's actions, pinched her fingers, and pointed at the air. Using Wu Yuding's voice, she scolded in exasperation. You. Xiaoduo immediately stopped. He smiled and spread his hands. That's our mother's punishment. Xiaoyan became more and more angry. Believe it or not, I'll break off the engagement with you. Xiaoduo turned over and faced Xiaoyan. Like a squatting husky, he suddenly turned over and stood upright. He glared at her. Say that again. I dare you to say it again. As he said that, he stretched out his hands, his fingers flexing. Don't. Xiaoyan hurriedly begged for mercy. I was wrong. Oomph. Xiaoduo said arrogantly. I checked my bank account some time ago. A total of 800 million yuan was missing. I didn't tell Mom and Dad about this. I don't know who spent it. Xiaoyan said angrily. Yes, I spent it. What are you going to do about it? You spent it well. You spent it well. Xiaoduo's eyebrows danced in delight. You should spend it. You spent it well. I'll give you a thumbs up. What did you buy? I bought a puppy. To put it under my blanket. Xiaoyan pouted. Hurry up and throw that puppy away from me. Xiaoduo winked with shifty eyes. I'll exchange it for a hot, live one for you, the kind that can talk. You can hug it to sleep, talk, play, and sleep with it. Get lost. You're so annoying. So Xiaoduo said, repetition of words, disgusting heart. Ayaya, little Yin. You. The two bickered for a while, and the atmosphere became more and more cheerful. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.